Coming up next, we travel to Toronto, Canada for a look at the election night returns as reported by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Voters in Canada went to the polls today to choose representatives to the nation's parliament. The leader of the party that gains the most seats in today's election will also serve as Prime Minister. The sitting Prime Minister, Progressive Conservative Brian Mulroney, faces opposition from Liberal leader John Turner and from the head of the New Democratic Party, Ed Broadbent. One of the major issues in this year's campaign has been the pending free trade agreement between the United States and Canada. Now from the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, the results of today's parliamentary election.
Good evening and a warm welcome to you in British Columbia, where the polls have just closed. I'm Peter Mansbridge. We've run out of time zones now. Canadians have finished voting everywhere, and we can tell our new viewers in BC that Brian Mulroney has done what he said he would, and that is win a second consecutive majority government for his Conservatives, a real rarity in Canadian politics. That majority is based on results that have already come in from 9 other provinces and the Northwest Territories. Let's look at the latest numbers. For the Conservatives, they have elected 158 members. They're leading in 5 other seats for a total of 155, and as you can see, the numbers change as we talk. The Liberals are at 85. The NDP is at 24. As we moved west tonight, we saw very early that the Tories were losing some votes, but not enough to lose that majority. Let's look at where the votes have gone so far. This will give you an indication. The Tories up at 43%, the Liberals at 35%, and the NDP at 18%. How does that compare with 4 years ago? The Tories are down 7 points, the Liberals are up 7 points, and the NDP are calling it almost break even from where they were last time in 1984. A quick review of some of the most prominent candidates running in this election. Brian Mulroney, to no one's surprise, has been re-elected by a whopping margin in Charlevoix. And in Oshawa, the NDP leader, Ed Broadbent, has been re-elected by an equally impressive margin. Of course, John Turner's riding. The polls have just closed in Vancouver Quadra, so we will get his results to you as soon as we can. Brian Mulroney will have a number of returning cabinet ministers to build a new team, though right now one cabinet minister is in a very tight fight. Joe Clark is leading, but only just over Preston Manning of the Reform Party. 143 votes is the spread in Yellowhead. It is close. Clark has been leading since the first poll, but on every poll as it comes in, it is very close. Now for some Conservative cabinet winners. Don Mazankowski, the Minister of Everything, has been re-elected in Vegreville by a healthy margin, although not the kind of big margins that we've come used to for Conservatives in Alberta. We also have John Crosbie winning re-election, Jake Epp in Manitoba, Mike Wilson, the Minister of Finance, and Barbara McDougall also in Toronto. They have all been re-elected in their positions as Conservative candidates. We'll have to see when the new cabinet is announced whether they hold on to the same portfolios. We should also add that all of Mulroney's cabinet ministers from Quebec have been re-elected as well. The same cannot be said for some other cabinet ministers, though. Here are some of the losers. Flora MacDonald going down a defeat tonight in the Kingston and the Islands in Ontario. Tom McMillan, the Minister for the Environment, losing in Prince Edward Island. Ray Natishan, the Minister of Justice, has lost his seat in Saskatoon. And Jim Kelleher, the Solicitor General has lost in Northern Ontario. One we should mention who has also lost, Stuart McGuinness, the Minister of Public Works, also went down to defeat tonight in Halifax. Some thoughts on all this from the CBC's chief political correspondent, David Halton. The Conservative majority, free trade goes through.
Well, free trade, the country has pronounced decisively in terms of the large majority it's given Brian Mulroney in favor of free trade. The Prime Minister, Peter, argued all along that Canada was secure enough in its identity, confident enough that it could go into this much closer relationship with the United States without compromising our independence. The verdict tonight in favor of free trade.
You know, when we get to British Columbia on election night, as we have just done, there's a tendency to think, well, it's all over, no reason to stick around. Well, let me give you a few reasons to stay right where you are. It begins, I suppose, with John Turner. What happens in his riding of Vancouver Quadra? What happens to his political future? There may be high drama ahead. And just how big will the final number be for the Conservatives, and what of the NDP? They thought they'd do well in BC. We're about to find out. So there's every reason to stick around. You don't see history being made every day, and this is important history. You'll also want to know what's happening where you voted today. In the Eastern Time Zone, everything is pretty well decided, but in the West, there's full coverage of local returns every half hour from your local CBC station. So we've got it all for you. If you've been watching for a few hours now, and we know that those of you out in Newfoundland have been watching for even more than a few hours, you know there's plenty going on. If you've just joined us, we're glad to have you here, and we're going to get you right up to speed. Let's cross the country with a review of where we stand, beginning on the prairies with Eric Malling. Eric.
Across the prairies, Peter, lots of action. Let's look at how the Tories have done in the three prairie provinces so far. In Manitoba, they've elected 7, but that's off 2. In Saskatchewan, 4. The NDP has upset everything in Saskatchewan. In Alberta, of course, 25 Conservatives, but the NDP is holding on to a very narrow lead in one constituency in Edmonton. The votes across the prairies of the Conservatives, these are leading and elected, or the overall board. You see the Conservatives taking the majority of seats as always, but the NDP, largely because of those wins in Saskatchewan, 13 seats, and the Liberals in Winnipeg at the expense of both the Conservatives and the NDP with 5 seats. The total vote across the prairies. Manitoba, the Conservatives are off 6. In Saskatchewan, they're off 6. There it paid off for the New Democrats. In Alberta, they're off 15, and this is interesting, is not at the expense, is not because of the Liberals or the Conservatives. Most of that vote is going to the smaller parties, primarily the Western Reform Party, which is going to continue to make Alberta politics interesting. They want a much tougher stand for the West, and they're the ones who have hurt the Tories in terms of popular vote, if not seats. Some of the constituencies. Howard Pauley, this is a personal present for Brian Mulroney. They had a real grudge going after Pauley said Mulroney couldn't be trusted. Pauley's been defeated in an area that he held provincially for 19 years. Elsewhere across the prairies, in Saskatchewan, the big story was Ray Natishan's defeat. He'd been targeted by some of the pro-life people. They got behind the Liberal, who had no chance of winning. The effect was to elect the New Democrat, who's of course pro-choice. It seems a little perverse. And in the riding of Yellowhead, the External Affairs Minister, Joe Clark, is being pushed, it's close, by Preston Manning, who's the leader of the Reform Party. When I assumed the External Affairs Minister was going to have a breeze, I spoke too soon, Peter. That riding in Edmonton, we still don't know which way it'll go, but I suspect when you look at the NDP in Edmonton, we think of Grant Notley, who we all knew, who was the lone New Democrat in that province for so many years, then killed in a plane crash. Right. I suspect Notley's watching the results somewhere tonight. I'm sure he'll be watching the public network.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Eric Malling reporting on the prairies tonight. We'll update you on what's happened in both Ontario and Quebec a little later. One of the interesting stories that was developing tonight was whether or not there'd be the first husband and wife team in the House of Commons. Joe Clark, as Eric has updated you on, is leading in his riding of Yellowhead. But what of Maureen McTeer? Well, the news is not good for Maureen McTeer. She lost in her riding of Carleton Gloucester in Ottawa. She went down to defeat to the Liberals, so there will be no husband and wife team. Maureen McTeer, though, did have a few words for us after the results came in. Here's how she felt.
Obviously, I'm very disappointed, but I'm delighted that we won nationally, because I think what's important in this election was that the people had to choose between the past and the future. And what they've chosen is a progressive Conservative Party that is ready and able to govern in the future. And I'm disappointed, of course, that I won't be part of the team, but I know that they'll have me there in spirit and in person at some of the events at least, although not at the cabinet table, obviously. But I am delighted that we ran a campaign which, even with all the distortions by the opposition parties, turned into a majority government, and I congratulate the Prime Minister and I congratulate all of the people who will be serving with him.
Why do you think you lost?
All right, Maureen McTeer, gracious in defeat tonight in her Ottawa riding of Carleton Gloucester. Her husband, Joe Clark, the latest update on that situation, he has been leading ever since the first poll was turned in Yellowhead, but nevertheless the gap is very narrow between him and Preston Manning. David, your thoughts?
Well, Peter, let's look where the Conservatives have crafted their victories across the country tonight. We have to remember that the figures we're looking at, when we look at those minuses and pluses, are basically on the redistributed figures. So we're looking really on those redistributed figures at a comparison to about 228 Tory seats back in 84. There we have the provincial contrast. In Atlantic Canada, they're down 12. In Quebec, up 2. Ontario, minus 28. But again, starting from these large numbers, they could afford to take these losses. The total vote in Atlantic Canada substantially down. In Quebec, up 3%. Basically, the Conservative Party in Quebec has now become the majority party there by a really stunning amount. In Ontario, they're down 9%, but again, that has been, even with that 9% loss, they're still above the Liberals in seats. So it's a very evenly spread result in terms of Quebec and Ontario.
All right, David, thanks very much. Jeffrey Simpson and Alan Gregg join us again once now. And I want to talk a little bit in terms of leadership. And Alan, why don't you start it off? Because obviously still a lot of Canadians do vote on the issue. They vote in terms of free trade, but they also vote in terms of leadership. We're coming up on a big result coming out of Vancouver Quadra for John Turner. But in terms of the numbers that you were gauging throughout the election on leadership, what were the factors like?
Well, in fact, at the worst times for the Tories in the polls, just immediately after the debate, when the gap was closing, and in fact for a brief period of time where the Liberals surpassed the Tories. The one thing that we always found solace in was that on the leadership questions, competence, vision, who best represents Canada in the world, all of those numbers, the Prime Minister continued to lead Turner for, by a significant margin. The analogy we tried to use is that there was a cancer on the body, but the body was strong. And that if you could, remove the cancer, the body was strong enough to heal the wound. And that's in fact what happened in the last 2 weeks of the campaign. So that for all the so-called momentum that the Liberals had, that they always trailed on leadership throughout the entire campaign.
Now, this has been one of the problems that's plagued John Turner throughout the 4 years in power. I mean, you cannot take away from the fact tonight that while the Tories have won a majority, the Liberals, Jeffrey, have more than doubled their seats, and that is a mark placing them firmly in second place and something to build on. But for John Turner, the leadership questions will continue.
Well, he's had a tempestuous, at times, relationship with the Liberal Party over the last 4 years. I'm interested in Alan's comment, Peter, because his low standing in the polls was both a liability and an opportunity. It was an opportunity in the sense that he could so clearly and dramatically exceed public expectations, as he did, not just in the debate, but throughout most of the campaign. But it was a liability in the sense that there were too many memories. Too many Canadians remembered what had happened over the last 4 years, caucus revolts, policy divisions, MPs who chose not to run again, the failure of a number of prominent Liberals to present themselves as candidates. And this gave the Conservatives, with their advertising and their campaign, an opportunity to remind people about that. I agree with you that he's increased his standing within the Liberal Party quite substantially with this result and the kind of campaign that he fought. And if he wins tonight in Quadra, I think it would be a great mistake for the Liberals to do anything to push him out. I don't think he's going to lead the party in the next election campaign. I don't believe he considers that a possibility. But it would be very prudent for the Liberals to keep Mr. Turner there for a year or so, to have him go to the next Liberal convention and say, I'm not going to lead the party in the next election, and for the Liberals to take a couple of years to allow some of these new MPs to get experience, to see whether any of them have leadership potential, and to choose a new leader sometime in 1990. By the way, one thing Mr. Turner will not want is for the leadership of the Liberal Party to fall into the hands of Jean Chrétien. And the longer he waits, the better the chance that Chrétien won't be the leader.
Okay, Alan, step back for a moment from your partisan role in working for the Conservatives through the election on this in terms of the leadership thought. I mean, you can't take away from Turner the fact that they have doubled their seats. The base of the party is back. They are back as the traditional second party. But these kind of leadership numbers that you came up with through the campaign, and we saw it in the results of other polls as well, can those kind of numbers change for somebody like John Turner, who's able to say now, I brought the party back, I did what Lester Pearson did in some ways between 58 and 62, although Pearson did hold them back to did hold the Tories back to a minority in 62. But can the kind of things that you've noticed in the polling, can that change for Turner?
I don't think so. He's been the leader now for almost 5 years. I mean, going into the campaign, in fact, I'd never seen leadership scores like John Turner's. No matter how bad it got for Pierre Trudeau, he was always tough and decisive. No matter how bad it got for Joe Clark, he was always honest and forthright. Even Mr. Stanfield was always sincere. John Turner was nothing. In that very short period of the debate, he struck not so much a responsive chord in terms of what he said, but how he said it. He demonstrated what we've called kind of the watchwords of leadership in the 1990s, which is spontaneity, emotion, and motive. But the fact of the matter is that both he couldn't follow up in the subsequent period, and that the substance of what he said was insufficient to continue him to carry on. That I think now the prospects of him reviving his leadership are very, very minimal.
All right, gentlemen, I thank you both for your time tonight. We'll talk to you again hopefully a little later on. We're lucky enough to be joined now from Selkirk, Manitoba by the former Premier of Manitoba, Howard Pauley, also the unsuccessful candidate in the Selkirk riding tonight. Mr. Pauley, can you hear me okay? It's Peter Mansbridge.
Yes, I can. Thanks, Peter.
So what happened out there in Manitoba tonight? We got an interesting story developing there where we see the Liberals picking up seats in some old traditional NDP turf in the inner city of Winnipeg, and you unsuccessful at your attempt to make come back into federal politics this time. What's happening?
Well, what happened in Manitoba was certainly an upsurge in Liberal support in urban Manitoba, an upsurge mainly due to opposition to the free trade measures proposed by Mulroney, and certainly it affected me and my constituency and resulted in wins by the Liberals from both the Conservatives and from the New Democrats.
What happened there in this race in terms of that fight for the anti-free trade vote? It looked so good for the NDP before the debates. We all know what happened in the debates. Was it all debate-driven? Is that when people started leaving the NDP and moving into the Liberals?
There was certainly an upsurge in Liberal support after Turner's showing in the debate. There's no question about that. You could feel it, that they had improved their standing a great deal. They were in trouble prior to that. And in my own constituency, the fact the Liberals moved up so much to a strong third position, I believe, by the last tally, was quite a surprise. And it was as a consequence of the debate, the focus on the free trade, the opposition to the free trade in the Selkirk constituency.
Mr. Pauley, be frank with me here on this one. A lot of criticism inside the NDP over a number of things. The party's failure to grab hold of the free trade position right out of the opening gate when Mr. Broadbent held his first statement when the election was called, and also in terms of Mr. Broadbent's position on the time for a two-party system in Canada. Were those both mistakes?
Well, I suppose there'll be a lot of discussion in the future, but I think we have to keep in mind that it was Ed Broadbent that came very, very close to putting the New Democratic Party in a position of at least opposition. If it wasn't for the fluke of the debate and the impressions that were created by that debate, Ed Broadbent could very well have been the leader of the opposition. That has never happened before in the history of the CCF, New Democratic Party. And I think Ed Broadbent is still has much to offer.
But I wonder, because you were so close to tasting second place, and I mean, let's face it, a lot of you were thinking very ambitiously of forming the major opposition party in the House of Commons, because you were so close to tasting that and you lost it in the dying weeks of the campaign, is it a time for sort of reassessment in terms of the party, in terms of leadership?
I don't think as far as leadership is concerned, I think we have to reassess some policies, but so little was expected of John Turner. And yet John Turner performed so well in that debate that he appeared to do, in fact, much better than anyone else because of the low expectation to begin with. A great deal was expected from Ed Broadbent. He did perform well, But in relationship to Turner, it didn't come through in the same way because of the much higher expectation.
Last point, Mr. Pauly, what's next for you?
Well, I'm going to spend some time with my family. I'm just going to reflect. And I don't know at this stage.
All right, Mr. Pauly, we really do appreciate you joining us tonight. I know it's been a difficult night for you in terms of losing that seat, but you've always been good to us in the past. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Okay, Howard Pauly joining us from Selkirk, Manitoba, the former NDP Premier of Manitoba, going down a defeat to the Tories in the riding of Selkirk in Manitoba. We've finally got some early returns coming in from BC, and that's why you see the Tory number starting to move up a little bit. In terms of the 160 figure, Don Newman is watching the situation in British Columbia, and here's an update on what's happened so far.
Peter, I think we have to concede that our friends in British Columbia will be a little disappointed when they turned on their TVs at 8 o'clock their time to find that we'd already declared a majority government for the Conservatives. Earlier on in the campaign, it had been hoped out in British Columbia that the final tally would come down to BC and that they would decide who was going to be the government of Canada. It isn't turning out that way, but there are some interesting races going on. And the races between the NDP and the Conservatives mainly. As you can see, the NDP at the moment picking up 4 seats, the Conservatives losing 6, and the Liberals, surprisingly at the moment, picking up 2 seats, neither of those on the computer yet, John Turner's Vancouver Quadra seat. Let's see how some of the races are going. Prince George Peace River, Frank Oberle, the Minister of State for Science and Technology, he is leading at the moment. Running second in that riding at the moment is a man named Jay Hill, who is the Reform Party candidate, the Western Reform Party candidate. It had been feared by the Conservatives that the Reform Party might hurt their candidates, but so far, Oberle holding off a Reform challenge and holding the NDP to 3rd place. In Kootenay East, this is a rematch from the 1984 and the 1980 elections. Sid Parker of the New Democrats currently leading Stan Graham by 265 votes. Graham beat Parker in 84, Parker beat Graham in 80, and they're going at it again in a ding-dong battle again tonight. Let's take a look now at Fraser Valley East. This is interesting.
So you make some projections on those numbers.
Well, I project that Ross Belcher will not stay 3rd all of the way tonight. I won't go any further than that. This is a riding, though, where both the Christian Reform Party and the Western Party, or the Christian Heritage Party and the Western Reform Party, may weigh in before the evening is over. But I don't think I'll go any further than that. This is also a very interesting race. Mike O'Connor, the Liberal candidate, was not expected to be in it. It's only one poll of 200. The other 2 candidates are both sons of famous people. Jeff Young is the son of John Young, who was head of the Prices and Incomes Commission in the early 1970s, and John Bruin, the NDP candidate, is the son of Andrew Bruin, who used to be an NDP member from Ontario. So very early returns yet so far, Peter, from BC.
Okay, well, we'll look for the updates on those returns from BC quickly. We're joined now by the Minister of Finance, Michael Wilson, who has won re-election tonight. Mr. Wilson, it's Peter Mansbridge. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Peter, how are you?
Good. Well, I guess you have to have a little mixed feeling tonight. Obviously, the second Tory majority government, but you have lost some friends around the cabinet table there, some colleagues. But give us your impressions of what happens now. Free trade through right away?
Well, first let me say I'm very sorry that some of my colleagues have been defeated, Peter. They're very good people, particularly people like Flora MacDonald, Ray Natishan, who've had very strong experience in government. As far as free trade is concerned, the Prime Minister has indicated that that's going to be a top priority for us. We'll deal with that right off the top.
Okay, David Holton's got a quick question for you here, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Wilson, we hear from Conservative Party headquarters that Brian Mulroney wants to have a large element of continuity to his new cabinet, and you and other senior members will be staying on in your same portfolios. Are you going to be still looking after finance in the next few weeks?
Well, that's obviously up to the Prime Minister, David. Certainly, these are the financial issues are priorities that I have stressed very much during the course of this campaign, and if he chose me to take on those responsibilities, continue them, I would be very fortunate to do so, I think.
Okay, I need a quick answer on this one, Mr. Wilson. A lot of economists concerned about all the promises that have been made here, the impact on the deficit. Is the deficit still the #1 priority for you?
Deficit is very much the #1 priority, Peter. We've made a good deal of progress during the course of the last 4 years, but it's still too high. We've got to get it down further, and we've got to continue that into this next mandate.
All right, Mr. Wilson, we thank you for taking the time to talk with us tonight.
Thank you.
All right, the overall numbers here now. The Tories, a second majority government. Well, you're just hearing from a few of the winners and the losers this evening. You are going to hear from all three party leaders coming up in the next, I would guess we should be hearing from the first one sometime in the next half hour or so. They do like to hear all the results from British Columbia first, and obviously for John Turner wants to see his own situation, his own personal situation in the riding of Vancouver Quadra very quickly. But in the next hour and a half, you'll be hearing from John Turner, the leader of the Liberal Party, and they are at 85 seats, more than double what they had last time. The Prime Minister will be speaking from Baie-Comeau, and Ed Broadbent is expected to speak from Oshawa tonight. That's all coming up in the next hour and a half. So aside from the results that we've still got to come in from British Columbia, lots of other action for you this evening in our live broadcast of Election 88. David, your thoughts?
Well, I was very interested to hear Finance Minister Wilson says he wants to once again put the focus on bringing down the deficit and the national debt, Peter. You know, the Conservatives promised about $12 billion of pre-election campaign commitments before the campaign began. It's going to be difficult paying for those and getting the deficit down at the same time, especially when interest rates are up. Economists are saying adding $2 to $3 billion to our deficit. So Wilson can do one of two things. He can tax us some more, or else he can try and cut government spending. And there's not a whole lot in Ottawa's discretionary spending that they can cut now. It's going to be a hard choice for him.
Okay, well, as you say, it is expected that Michael Wilson will stay on in the finance portfolio, that they want some continuity there, and clearly on the part of a lot of people on the House of Commons, no matter which party they were sitting for, there was a lot of respect for Michael Wilson, and still is, I assume, after tonight. Now, the Liberals are gathering out in Vancouver tonight to be with their leader, John Turner, when he makes his speech later on in the evening. Karen Webb is standing by at Liberal Party headquarters. And Karen, what's the mood out there tonight?
Well, Peter, the Liberals are gathering, but they aren't gathering very quickly. There's still only maybe 150 people here that have come in all night. The mood here is one of tremendous disappointment. Not just that the Liberals didn't come close. Well, not just that they didn't win, but that they didn't come close. At this point, the Tories are still 2-1 in the seats in the House of Commons. I talked to one of the Turner's advance team, and he was saying, well, really, it's the people of Canada who should be disappointed. But there isn't a happy Liberal organizer here at all.
All right, Karen. Well, we thank you. We know we'll be back to you later on in the evening as more results come in and as we await the arrival of Mr. Turner there in Vancouver. Thanks
We're told.
Again.
Bye, Peter.
Okay. No, sorry. Go ahead, Karen. You were trying to add some other point. Go ahead.
I was going to say that we're told that John Turner isn't going to be coming down here until he's heard whether he's elected in Quadra. Now, the last time I talked to anybody in Vancouver, they were expecting he'd be re-elected easily. But now people here aren't quite as certain, so it could be a little while until we see John Turner.
All right. Well, the one thing that we've known well here over the last 4 years, we don't make any quick predictions on what happens in Vancouver Quadra. A lot of people last time round, as Karen remembers, and David Halton does too, were expecting that John Turner would not win in Vancouver Quadra. He did, and he won convincingly. So nobody, you can tell, has been making any predictions one way or the other on what might happen in Vancouver Quadra tonight. The early returns still not in from Quadra, so we'll have to wait for those in the moments ahead. But as soon as they are, we will let you know just exactly what they are. Barbara Frum is standing by once again with her political panel. Barbara.
Robin Sears, let's start with your leader. Has he been as depressed as rumor has it in the last couple of weeks? Has he seen what was coming?
No, I spoke to him just about an hour ago. He's obviously sad at the loss of some friends, but I think he is, like the rest of us, looking forward to some great results from British Columbia, and they're beginning to come in.
His campaign, has it been traumatic for him? Lots of suggestions that he's been under a lot of criticism internally, that when he made mistakes, instead of the team saying, sorry, boss, they blamed the boss.
No, the only people who blame the boss are the press. Inside, there is absolute solidarity. We do not chew up our leaders. It is one of our convictions.
I want to ask about your leader. What's his mood going to be like tonight?
Well, I think you have to imagine a guy of rather strong convictions on the central issue of the campaign, having ridden a roller coaster. And he's been up, he's been down, he's been tossed around. He had a great line, you know, in an interview at a Quebec radio station. He said, "J'ai pas de dette." I have no debts. And he's done it himself. I think he should feel proud. He's doubled the number of seats. He's focused the country on the issue of his choice, and he's forced them to make a decision. The decision has gone against him. I think he's a guy of great firmness. He's a macho guy. I think he's going to ride this one out very well.
Nancy James, in what sense, one has sensed that for 4 years Brian Mulroney said, please give me credit for something. Does he get credit tonight?
I think he gets almost all the credit. I think this is a tremendous personal vindication for him. I think, as Alan Gregg indicated earlier, on virtually every leadership attribute that we tested in public opinion polling, the Prime Minister was so far out ahead it wasn't funny, in terms of competence, in terms of his vision of the country, in terms of his ability to lead, to project our values internationally. I mean, I think this is really...
Trust and integrity.
No, I'm not sure that's the case, Robin, but I think this has been a tremendous personal vindication.
From here?
I don't think his style needs to change. He's a passionate man. He's a man who believes deeply in what he's doing and what he's done for the last 4 years. I think he did show it in the last campaign. I think he certainly showed it in the campaign, and I think you have to give him an enormous amount of credit for the discipline he showed in the face of some really pretty outrageous accusations on the part of the opposition at certain points, and they were difficult for him, difficult as they would be for any person to sit there and listen to the fact that people were saying he was less of a Canadian because he believed that we were capable of competing in the world.
He gave as good as he got.
Yes, he did. He gave better than he got. I would argue that he showed a great deal of discipline and a great deal of persistence in advancing his vision of the country, and it was clearly successful.
Let us hope that Christina McCall is not right, that we have a Ronald Reagan in the making tonight.
Peter.
All right, Barbara, thanks very much. Let's look at the overall numbers as we punch up our mini board to give you the story of the election night at a glance right now. The Conservatives leading or elected in 163 seats, the Liberals in 84, the NDP in 35. The story of the night, once again, a second Conservative majority government for Brian Mulroney. First time this century any Conservative leader has ever done that. Our Election 88 coverage comes back in a moment. All right, time once again to update everyone on the big story tonight, the return of Brian Mulroney to the House of Commons with a majority of Conservative MPs in tow. Let's look at the latest numbers, reflecting some early returns from ridings now in British Columbia. It shows the Conservatives elected in 156 seats. They only needed 148 for a majority. They're leading in another 6 for a total of 162. For the Liberals, they've elected in 80, leading in 4 for a total of 84. The NDP starting to pick up seats now in British Columbia, and their number is already past their historic high of 30 last time round in 84. So there is some good news for everybody tonight. Clearly the best news is for the Tories. 162 seats, a Conservative majority government. They will go ahead with free trade. For the Liberals at 84 seats, they've more than doubled what they had last time. And for the NDP at 37 seats, they are past. They have more seats this time than they've ever had before in the House of Commons. Well, looking at seats is one thing. Let's look at the total vote. This gives you an idea of how votes have shifted around during the evening and during the past 4 years. The Conservatives at a convincing 44% of the popular vote. The Liberals at 35%, the NDP down at 18%. They're back down at their traditional levels. 44 Tories, 35 Liberals, 18 NDP. By anybody's count, that is a convincing total. But they do have to measure themselves against what they did 4 years ago, where the Tories got 1 out of every 2 votes in the country at 50%. They have dropped 6 points. The Liberals have gone up 7 points. The NDP are down 1 point. All right, we have our first returns coming in from the Vancouver riding of Quadra. Why is that one important? Obviously because John Turner is running there, and you saw a real quick look at what is happening in Vancouver. Let's look at it again. 46-vote lead for Turner in Vancouver Quadra. That's early going. That's based on just 1 or 2 polls. Interesting race going on in Vancouver Quadra because John Turner is running against John Turner, one of the candidates running for, I think it's the Rhinoceros Party, but it's the Liberal John Turner on top at this point. 82 votes in the early going, just 2 polls reported. David.
That other John Turner could be a bit of a problem, you know. Another Pierre Trudeau ran against Pierre Trudeau and took 1,000 votes. Well, if it is a close race in Quadra, Peter, you know, 1,000 votes, if the other John Turner gets that, it could make quite a difference. But generally, you know, Turner is expected to profit from redistribution. He's lost some of the western parts of the riding that were Conservative before, so the Liberals are pretty bullish about him winning Quadra.
Okay, well, it is interesting, though. Let's see who's running third on just 2 polls. It's that other Turner for the Rhinoceros Party, and so it'll be interesting to watch, as you say, through the evening, see whether that vote total for the Rhinoceros candidate cuts into John Turner's own total in Vancouver Quadra. In a moment, we'll be updating you on all the BC ridings with Don Newman, but first we're going to check in with Eric Melling, who can give us the latest results from Alberta. Eric.
There's the Conservatives, of course, have 24 of the 26 seats, but there's 2 constituencies that are going to go down to the last poll, I think. In Edmonton East, Harvey, the NDPer, Ross Harvey, is ahead of Bill Lessick, the sitting MP. Ross Harvey was the director of the NDP research office. He used to wear big coveralls to work. He bought a suit after he decided to run, and it looks like if he can hold that, he might have to buy 2 suits. And in the riding of Edmonton North, that's held by Steve Poprosky, was once a tackle for the Edmonton Eskimos, a very popular guy, and it's a very, very close race. Speaking of popular people from Alberta, Don Mazankowski, of course, Peter, I remember we were rookies in Ottawa together. When I went there as a reporter, he first got elected, and Maz and
Didn't he sell you your first suit, Eric?
Maz and Jack Horner showed up with these cowboy suits in lime green and purple, and the Tory backbenchers were agog, and they started selling them. You could go into the West Block and get measured up and have the suit delivered from Alberta. I wish I'd bought one of those now.
Yeah, come on, fess up, you bought one. We know you did.
With a lot of sparkles on it, too. If only I could sing. Maz can sing.
Well, Don Mazankowski, obviously one of the crucial people around Brian Mulroney in the past year and a half. A year and a half ago, you don't have to think back that far, when the Tories were in significant problems in the public opinion polls, in staffing around the Prime Minister's office, some internal cabinet problems. A lot of things changed. A lot of credit has gone, quite rightly, to people like Derek Burney, the Chief of Staff, Mark Lortie, the Press Secretary. Interesting, both of them are moving on. Burney heads off to Washington as the new ambassador at the beginning of the year. But perhaps not enough credit also went to Don Mazankowski, who was crucial for Brian Mulroney in getting the cabinet and the caucus in line, taking over a lot of responsibilities. You know, Melling likes to call him the minister of everything. In many ways he was. He had all sorts of portfolios, David.
5, actually, believe it or not.
So when the Burneys and the Lorties move on, the Mazankowskis stay, and it will be important. It'll be especially important, too, seeing as Brian Mulroney, although in victory tonight, can't be too happy about the fact he has lost some stalwart cabinet members. We think of the Natishans and the McDonalds. We just want to check in quickly. We'll get back to this discussion in a moment. But Keith Bogue is standing by outside the headquarters where John Turner has been spending this evening, getting ready for the results to come in. Keith, of course, has followed John Turner throughout this campaign. And Keith, what are you hearing from the people around Turner tonight?
Well, we're outside the Hotel Vancouver, where Mr. Turner is with his family upstairs. He's been getting the results ever since the polls closed on the East Coast. They've been called in from Liberal headquarters. His advisors have given him the results, but Mr. Turner has spent most of his time on the telephone calling those candidates who have won to congratulate them, calling those who haven't won to offer his sympathy and condolences and encouragement in the future.
All right, Keith, nobody has watched John Turner closer than you have in the past 7 weeks or so. A lot of speculation obviously starting up already tonight, in spite of the fact that the Liberals have more than doubled their seats. But the very fact the Tories have won the majority government on free trade, the fight of John Turner's life, which he has lost tonight, a lot of speculation and discussion starting up already about the fate for John Turner. Now, as I say, no one's watched him as close as you have in these past 7 weeks. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that one thing we will definitely see is the great personal dignity of John Turner. He's gone through a lot of adversity in 4 years. He's gone through some adversity during the 7 weeks of this campaign. But as I say, he has an enormous amount of courage and personal dignity, and I think that's the only thing I would predict for certain that we'll be seeing tonight.
All right, Keith, thanks very much. We'll get back to you later on in the evening as Mr. Turner gets ready to leave the hotel to head out to the different party functions that he has to go to this evening, as well as the speech he will make not only to his own workers but to the nation. He was gracious in defeat last time in 1984 when the Liberal Party was humbled and humiliated to 40 seats. He said the people had spoken, and that is the main result that everything is gauged on. Well, the people have spoken again tonight. We await to hear what Mr. Turner says in response. The opening numbers, or the numbers we have them at this point: 165 Conservatives leading or elected, 85 Liberals, and 38 NDP. Now, we have tried to talk about each of the different parties tonight in terms of what these results mean to them. For the NDP, while looking at the 38-39 figure now, based on these results coming in from British Columbia, while that number is a historic high for them, the NDP has had a number of losses across the country. We want to walk you through a display of just what's happened to the NDP, and then David Halton will comment on it after that. In Atlantic Canada, they lost their only seat in Atlantic Canada, that one in St. John's East, where Jack Harris went down to defeat tonight. In Ontario, they dropped 2 seats. On the prairies, they have a +2, but there's a hidden story in the prairies and the beating the NDP took in Manitoba, especially in Winnipeg. They picked up some seats in Saskatchewan to counterbalance that, and they've had that historic move in Alberta. I think they're still leading in one riding in Alberta. Let's look at a few of the people from the NDP who have lost tonight. In St. John's East, Jack Harris lost that only Atlantic seat the NDP held to Ross Reed of the Conservatives in a bitter fight in St. John's East, a fight that quite frankly got personal at times. Jack Harris defeated. Here's another interesting NDP candidate who went down to defeat tonight in Ottawa Centre. Michael Cassidy, the former Liberal leader in Ontario, lost his Ottawa Centre riding tonight. That used to be considered strong NDP turf in Ottawa Centre, at least while Cassidy was there, but it's not anymore. He's gone. So in Broadview Greenwood in Toronto, Lynn McDonald has been defeated tonight. And I assume that was to Dennis Mills of the Liberals losing in Broadview. That was a campaign that's been going on for a couple of years. The Liberal candidate Mills spending a lot of money and a lot of time in that riding to knock off Lynn McDonald, and he was successful. Now these are the ones that really take some looking at. You get used to a person like David Orlico in the House of Commons. If he'd won again tonight, he would have been the longest sitting member in the House of Commons. But David Orlico has lost that seat in Winnipeg North by a rather convincing margin. And for Stanley Knowles, sitting back in Ottawa, who is no longer in federal politics in the sense of sitting as an MP, he certainly sits around the Speaker's table and watches the goings-on every day. He must be wondering tonight when a riding like Winnipeg North Centre, that one he held for so long, that tipped over too. The socialist heartland in North Winnipeg, Peter. But the really disappointing thing, it seems to me, with the New Democrats showing tonight is that in spite of that national campaign, when you really look at where their gains are, they're in Western Canada. They've lost 2 seats in Ontario, won nothing in Quebec, won nothing in Atlantic Canada. So it seems to me that this is going to be a largely Western-based party, which is going to put pressure on, if Ed Broadbent does decide to step down, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the New Democrats to choose their next leader if they decide to have a convention from Western Canada. But it's interesting how, even in spite of the fact we've seen a big majority government for the Tories, nothing like we saw last time in '84 where they had over 200 seats, but in a normal election time, any party that racked up these number of seats, we'd be saying a big majority at 164 seats. But in spite of that, you're looking at good story for the Tories, second majority plus free trade. You're looking at the Liberals. When you start looking for the silver lining, you look at that number, you say it's more than double what they had last time in 1984. You look at the NDP number, and Ed Broadbent's got to say, well, look, you know, I mean, you're putting the heat on me here. We've lost seats in a couple of areas, but look at the number. It's 41. It's up 11 seats from where we were last time, and that was a historic high. But nevertheless, the NDP had hoped to finish second. Now, this is a big loss for the Liberals in Quebec tonight. This has been a tight race all evening. And Garneau, the Liberal Party's finance critic, the architect of the Liberals' plans in Quebec, David, in terms of supporting Meech Lake, along with Premier Bourassa. He was argued with many times by people like Jean Chrétien and others, but Garneau goes down to defeat in Quebec. Wendy Mesley, you've been watching the Quebec story all evening. Garneau, even if he'd won the seat, was going to take the blame, one assumes, for the poor performance of the Liberal Party in Quebec tonight. But this is tough news.
This really shows you just how poorly the Liberals did in the province of Quebec. Raymond Garneau is one of the best-known politicians in that province. He almost won the leadership of the provincial party years ago. He was a finance minister for several years in Quebec City. He was hoping to have that job under a Liberal government in Ottawa. That hasn't happened. And yes, he was the man that convinced John Turner that if the Liberals supported Meech Lake, that they would win the support of Robert Bourassa and that machine, as well as a number of Quebecers. It didn't happen, and this is going to be a very bitter defeat for Raymond Garneau this evening.
Okay, when you look at those overall numbers that came out of Quebec tonight, you do You do see this interesting move in a little over 4 years. It used to be such traditional, long-time Liberal turf. You look at the results tonight in Quebec, and the Tories making significant gains once again.
It really is a victory of historic proportions. Brian Mulroney has managed to do what John Diefenbaker tried and failed, back-to-back victories in Quebec. He is a native son, and it seems as if he has actually put down Tory blue roots in the province of Quebec. More than a third of those ridings, the Tories won by more than a margin of more than 10,000 votes. Huge majorities, and it seems that there actually are roots there now, although mostly outside of Montreal, where there are very large francophone populations. There's still a little bit of doubt among the anglophone population in Quebec of whether Brian Mulroney is the best one for them.
All right, Wendy, thanks very much. Time now to update the ridings in British Columbia. Don Newman been doing yeoman service all evening. Those of you in Newfoundland remember him watching the area there. He watched Ontario, and now he's watching BC. Don.
Peter, you were saying that the NDP hasn't been doing very well across the country, but they've said all along they were going to do well in BC, and in fact, that is exactly what they are doing. In fact, Nelson Rees, the party House Leader in the Commons, has already been re-elected in Kamloops, and the party is running very strongly in the 32 ridings in BC, 4 more than in the last Parliament. Let's just see how the parties are standing in BC at the moment. Look at that. A change of 10 for the NDP. They've elected 1 and they're leading in 16. Mainly coming from the Tories, of course, who had 19 seats in the last Parliament. They're down 12. And the Liberals, surprisingly, up 2, leading in 3 at the moment, up 2. Let's look at some of the ridings that have been reported. Let's first look at the popular vote, and that'll explain why the NDP are doing so well as the count goes on here. They're tied with the Conservatives. The Liberals, way down, not expected to do too well. The interesting thing is that the Conservatives have come down. The NDP are holding about the same. The Liberals have only gone up slightly. And what this says is that the Western Reform Party and the Christian Heritage Party are taking some of that Tory vote. Otherwise, we might see an even bigger change. Although, because the Tories are losing votes to those other 2 smaller parties, that's electing some NDP members. For instance, look at Sid Parker in Kootenay East. He's leading Stan Graham at the moment by 216 votes. These 2 fellows have traded that riding back and forth a couple of times before. In Prince George Bulky Valley, Lauren McCush, the sitting Conservative, decided not to run again. At the moment, Brian Gardner, who ran against McCush in '84 and was blown away by him, is leading Valerie Cordeman of the Tories by 170 votes, and we'll be watching how that one unfolds in the central part of BC. In Nanaimo, Cowichan, Dave Stupich, who was the finance minister in the NDP provincial government in the 70s in BC, is leading Ted Schellenberg at the moment by a small margin of only 52 votes. Schellenberg elected for the first time in 1984. And let's take a look at another riding that the Tories had felt pretty good about, Fraser Valley East. At the moment, Don Olds, a teacher, is leading Ross Belcher, who was elected for the first time in '84 when he held the riding for the Tories. At the moment, he is trailing. And that, the Fraser Valley riding particularly, and perhaps Fraser Valley West, the one beside it, Peter, are ridings where both the Christian Heritage Party and the Western Reform Party have been running fairly strong campaigns, and this could be a problem for the Conservatives as the night unfolds.
All right, Don, thanks very much. We just broke the news to you about Raymond Garneau losing his seat in Quebec. That's significant for a number of reasons, not just the one seat, but Garneau was one of the men who tried to run the Liberal campaign in Quebec, had argued for John Turner to support the Meech Lake Accord, along with Robert Bourassa, but it was not a popular move elsewhere within the federal Liberal Party. You had Pierre Trudeau and Jean Chrétien saying it was a terrible idea. Garneau losing tonight. Let's check in on the reaction in Liberal Party headquarters in Montreal, where Neil MacDonald is standing by. What are they saying there tonight, Neil?
Peter, these people you hear around me are just about the only happy Liberals we've seen all night in here. For the most of the night, it's been like a morgue, very long faces. And when the news of Garneau's concession broke, there were a couple of people that broke down and cried. The people here have been sad. They haven't even been colorfully sad. They've seemed bored, and they've seemed to drift in and out listlessly. And tonight we've seen a couple of winners come in now. David Berger is just making his speech, and Sheila Feinstone just made her speech, one of some of the few Liberals who have won on the island of Montreal. But by and large, this isn't indicative. It's been a pretty sad place all night.
All right, Neil. Well, thanks very much. It's always tough to deal in those particular kind of remotes when the news is not good for the party that is orchestrating things, and that's unfortunate. Thanks very much, Neil. Now, you've seen a couple of flashes going back and forth across the bottom of your screen there tonight in the last few minutes, indicating some NDP gains in BC and NDP holes. Actually, Nelson Rees, the NDP House Leader, we just declared elected in his British Columbia riding. Now, we told you earlier about some of the Conservative cabinet ministers who have gone down to defeat tonight. I think perhaps everyone would agree that the most nationally known Conservative candidate who has lost tonight has been Flora MacDonald from Kingston in the Islands, her Ontario seat. We did manage to catch up to Flora MacDonald just a little while ago, and here's her reaction to the news tonight.
Obviously, there are a large number of retired people here, and I think that there was no doubt a question of how they were traumatized in large measure by the tactics that were used. However, that's part of the game, and so it's past now.
What was your reaction when you started to see the returns come in tonight? Yeah, I'm still here. She's being scrummed.
Well, my reaction was there's only one way to leave politics with honor, and that is to run in a campaign and be defeated.
All right, Flora MacDonald reacting to her defeat tonight in Kingston in the Islands. David, Flora MacDonald talked often throughout the campaign about the difficulties she was having selling free trade, spending a lot of time going into especially old folks' homes in her riding, trying to explain the details of the deal and how it would affect them. But obviously tonight the free trade deal and who knows what else affected her in Kingston in the Islands. You wanted to tell us some other things.
Well, with the kind of newcomers coming into the Tory ranks, in a sense it's not going to be very difficult for Brian Mulroney to
all right, David, we're going to have to get back to that a little later because Ed Broadbent and his wife Lucille reaching the stage now in Oshawa, preparing to address not only their own workers in Oshawa tonight, but the people of the country. We have talked a number of times already about Ed Broadbent's night tonight. The NDP are up at a historic high in terms of the seat total. But the big dream going into this campaign for the NDP was that they would move into second place. And Mr. Broadbent was talking openly and confidently before the debate about a two-party system, his being one of them. It didn't work out that way. A lot of people already talking about what the future now holds for Ed Broadbent. Let's go to Oshawa and listen to what he has to say.
I want to begin my comments tonight by offering the Prime Minister congratulations. He received a large mandate from the people of Canada. He now will be calling Parliament back before Christmas, and I want to assure the Prime Minister that as leader of the New Democratic Party, we are unequivocal in our commendation for the victory tonight. The democratic will has been expressed, but as an opposition party, we will continue to do what we have done for the past, which is to fight hard, whether it's on taxes, whether it's on the environment, whether it's concern for jobs, or about some of the implications, as we have described it, of the trade deal, to stand up strongly in opposition to protect the interests of average Canadians wherever they may live. I add immediately congratulations to all those men and women who ran for the New Democratic Party and were elected across Canada. It would not be accurate to say, as leader of the party in this election, this historic election, that I am not somewhat disappointed. Of course I am. We set out this campaign to do better than we did. We gave it our best, and as I said just a moment ago, the people of Canada have expressed their will. Nonetheless, I am pleased to be able to note that in this election, we as a party, with the forecasts that are before us now, are going to elect somewhat over 40 seats, which is the largest number in the history of the New Democratic Party of Canada. It is particularly important in terms of what the historical role of this New Democratic Party has been, for me to say that I have been pleased to see our big increase in support in the province of Quebec. I would very much like to be participating in the joy that comes from winning tonight in new seats in the province of Quebec, but at least I'm participating in the joy of seeing our vote very significantly established and to be able to compliment our men and women who ran throughout that province and who have laid the foundation for future success in that province for all of us. I add immediately that I am pleased in an equivalent way with the fact that we are now breaking ground in the province of Alberta. It looks like we've won. I'm confident that that will happen. That, too, is a major blessing, if I can put it that way, for the forces of truth, beauty, goodness, and light all across Canada to be in there in Alberta. Je félicite le Premier ministre avec sa victoire. C'est évident que la population canadienne
has given him its support, and to the present government, and to Mr. Mulroney himself. I am not hesitating in the slightest to congratulate him, and as a member of an opposition party, of course, I have the responsibility to continue in the next Parliament, as I have done in the past, to work for the common man, the common person in all regions of Canada. And we, the New Democrats, intend to continue to work in the future to obtain the equity in our tax system, for the creation of new jobs, for a clean environment and a healthy environment. These are the needs of the Quebec people and of all Canadian people. And as the leader of an opposition party, I have the intention to continue to work very much in the future, as I have done in the past. At the same time, I am very proud of our candidates, both men and women, in the province of Quebec. They worked very, very hard during this election campaign. They had a superb campaign, in fact, and they have begun, I can say, to establish the roots of our party in this historical province, in this distinct society of Quebec. And I have great confidence in the future that the Quebec people will elect New Democrats as they have been elected in other provinces. Thank you.
I conclude my comments through you, my friends here, to all the people of Canada, in expressing my gratification for the support that they have given our candidates in every region. I thank our candidates for fighting nobly and seriously for the cause of ordinary people, and I give my assurances to everyone that we will continue to do in the future what we have tried to do in the past, which is to fight with vigor, determination, intelligence, and honesty for the good of ordinary people in this land of ours, wherever they may live, in Atlantic Canada, in Quebec, in Ontario, in the prairies, or in British Columbia. Good night. We'll get on with the important battle of building a better Canada in the future. Thank you very much.
Ed and Lucille Broadbent stepping down from the stage. Mr. Broadbent conceding to Prime Minister Mulroney and congratulating him on his majority government win tonight. For Mr. Broadbent and for his wife, a difficult evening, I'm sure, and I think he even let us in on a little bit in his speech where he did admit, well, here we go with the national anthem for the NDP headquarters in Oshawa. For 13 years now, Ed Broadbent, with his wife Lucille at his side, have been crisscrossing the country, talking to Canadians. 13 years he's been the leader of the party, admitting a little bit tonight his disappointment that the party did not do as well as they'd hoped to do at the beginning of this campaign. But for Mr. Broadbent and for his wife Lucille, tomorrow is another day, and it's a day of some tradition in the Broadbent family. They always take a drive from Oshawa back to Ottawa after a federal election. They drive alone, just the two of them together, up the 401 from Oshawa and then on to Old Highway number 7 up into Ottawa, and I'm sure they'll be doing a lot of thinking during that drive. On a night like tonight, good news does come in small batches for the NDP, but it's starting to happen for them in BC, where they're leading, and I think the last count about 17 seats, and that's why you see them up around the 41 number, which is an historic high for the NDP. But the story now does move back out to the West Coast as we check in on the situation in Vancouver Quadro, where John Turner is running, and we have declared re-elected John Turner in Vancouver Quadro. He is likely to be the next national leader that we hear from tonight. We remember last time round when Mr. Turner had to speak to the nation after the party was somewhat humiliated down to 40 seats and a massive Tory majority. But tonight, with 10% of the polls in, already we are seeing a Turner victory. Now, I have one thing that I've been forgetting to mention at times during tonight, and I would like to welcome them into our broadcast, because we are going not just to our nation from coast to coast to coast, but we are in many ways going around the world tonight with our broadcast from here in Toronto. We're being seen in Washington, where at the Canadian Embassy there, the people have gathered to watch the returns come in. And we are also being seen right on the other side of the world, where it's already tomorrow, well into tomorrow, at the Canadian High Commission in Hong Kong. They've gathered to watch the results come in, and they are watching with keen interest. This election has taken on a lot of interest outside our own boundaries, of course, because of the free trade deal. They're interested in Hong Kong. They're also interested in Tokyo, where they've been watching us during the evening as well. Now, I mentioned the Washington Embassy, where people have been. Obviously, he was interested in the result tonight, knowing that it would take a Tory majority for that deal to go ahead through. Well, the Tory majority happened, and shortly after that announcement was made, Terry Milewski had an opportunity to talk to Peter Murphy, the U.S. trade negotiator, on the free trade deal.
But I'm very happy to see that the process is coming to a conclusion. I think it's good for both sides. I always thought it was a win-win agreement, and tonight I think we have to have a lot of credit goes to Prime Minister Mulroney for hanging in there, and I think it's his night. Just let him take the bows.
Were you surprised by the intensity of opposition in Canada and the objections that were raised during the campaign?
Yes, but you know, it's not for me to determine how politics is handled in Canada.
You're aware, obviously, that there were charges made that this was an opportunity for Americans to go after Canadian social programs as unfair subsidies. Your feelings about those charges now that the campaign is over?
I thought they were grossly overstated, and I didn't see anything to them. But, you know, I can understand why people would say there'd be a lot of emotion in the issue if you assume that social programs was a major issue. But clearly it is not, and as a result, I think the people in Canada chose a very smart move tonight.
All right, Peter Murphy, the U.S. trade negotiator who worked on the free trade deal. He sat across the table from Simon Reisman. We haven't heard from Peter Murphy, not surprisingly, throughout the election campaign. The same cannot be said about Simon Reisman, who took a very active part in the final few weeks of the campaign, tossing around some pretty heavy language at the people who were criticizing the free trade negotiations and the treaty that he signed on behalf of Canada. Well, it's time to update us on what's been going on in British Columbia. We did see the opening result there from Vancouver Quadro, declaring John Turner elected, but the story seems to be in BC tonight, the NDP push.
You're absolutely right, Peter. In fact, these people around the world who are watching a Canadian election, if it's the first one they've seen, they may think there are actually three elections going on. The one that the Liberals won in Atlantic Canada, the one that the Conservatives won in the rest of the country. Now we have a third separate election going on in British Columbia. That's the one the New Democratic Party is winning. Let's take a look at how the parties are standing in BC. Look at that. The NDP have picked up 12 seats, and they've taken them all from the Conservatives. Now the Liberals have slipped back. They're leading only in that one riding, and that is John Turner elected in Vancouver Quadra. Now, let's take a look at the party's total vote, and we'll get some idea of what is happening here. You can see the Conservatives have dropped 10% in their total vote. The NDP, while they're winning all of these seats, have only gone up 1%, and the Liberals have only gone up 1%. And that's because other parties, the Western Reform Party and the Christian Heritage Party, have gone up 6%, and they're taking those votes from the Conservatives. It's a bit ironic, I suppose. These are parties to the right of the Conservative Party, and taking those votes from the Conservatives are actually electing a lot of NDP members tonight, or so it would seem. Let's look at some of the prominent New Democrats who are doing well tonight in British Columbia. Dave Barrett, he was Premier of the province from 72 to 75. He has been elected tonight in his riding of Esquimalt-Juan de Fuca, one of the new ridings in BC. And also running well tonight, leading in a new riding of Burnaby Kingsway, the controversial Sven Robinson, the man who created quite a bit of attention when he announced earlier this year that he is gay. And he's running in a new riding, but yet he is running well ahead, not well ahead, but running ahead in Burnaby Kingsway. Re-elected tonight, Nelson Rees, the NDP House Leader. And Peter, when you were talking about possible leadership candidates for the NDP, Mr. Rees may be getting out his French book tonight and trying to learn some French. He would be at least someone you'd have to consider in the NDP leadership race if it develops. Bob Skelly, a former leader of the NDP in the province of British Columbia, he has been elected tonight in Comox, Alberni. He has defeated Darlene Weir of the Conservative Party. Mr. Skelly did poorly in the provincial election against Bill Vander Zalm, but he's now coming to Ottawa, where he will actually join his brother Ray Skelly, who's been an MP for a number of years. And another well-known NDP member of Parliament from British Columbia, also running in a new riding, Ian Waddell. He is leading May Reid of the Conservatives in Port Moody, Coquitlam, another redistributed riding. Ian Waddell doing quite well there too. And before I throw it back to you, just let me tell you that in the Yukon, Audrey McLaughlin of the NDP is also holding on to that riding up there. So the NDP doing well when we get way out west, Peter.
All right. Well, they didn't do so bad next door in Alberta either. We have become accustomed to all the Alberta seats going Tory. They didn't all go Tory tonight in one riding, Edmonton East. Ed Broadbent is quite correct. A little history for the NDP here tonight as they won Ross Harvey, winning the seat for the NDP over Bill Lessick of the Tories. And it was a close race all evening, but we are projecting the NDP as the winners in Edmonton East. Eric Melling has been covering the prairies for us tonight, and you were warning us these last couple of days that the NDP had all sorts of possibilities in Edmonton. Well, you were right.
Yes, but Peter, they pinpointed some ridings there, but the real story in Alberta, I think, is the same as in British Columbia. The NDP only came up about 3.5% across the province in the popular vote. There's no great surge to the left. The party that really came up were the fringe parties, the Western Reform Party. They went up 12%. So it sure ain't a surge to the left in Alberta.
Yeah, but the thing that you have to always keep in mind, it doesn't really matter how you got there. When you get there, you're there, and it is a little bit of history for them.
They've got a seat now, and they've worked on it for many years. How many times was Ed Broadbent there during the campaign?
Yeah, he was there a few times, and certainly in the final blitz for the week. So one of the things that happened nicely for the NDP tonight, they made that breakthrough in Alberta, the seat they've always wanted to capture out in Alberta, and they've got it tonight. Let's check in with Barbara Frum. Barbara?
Thanks, Peter, and I'm back with Knowlton Nash and Christina McCall. Christina, one can say that ever since John Turner drilled into that raw nerve of nationalism 4 weeks ago on the debate, that he has set the agenda, but he hasn't won the country. Something was missing.
Yeah, his whole campaign was fraught with irony. I mean, he went into it as his party's biggest liability for that wonderful 10-day period. At least it was wonderful for Liberals. He became its greatest asset, and then he fell off again. And I think there were fundamental problems with the Liberal Party after his nightmare 4 years as leader that showed up in that last 2 weeks when he couldn't consolidate that gain. And he turned out to be a one-note campaigner. He was wonderful, quite brilliant at evoking all those latent nationalistic feelings, but he didn't have a second punch.
Why not?
Well, the weaknesses of the party showed up. Its financial weakness. It hadn't been able to raise enough money. They couldn't do the kind of advertising that the Tories plus the business community were going to be able to do. I think their organizational problems showed up. In many places in the country, when I phoned around to Liberals, they hadn't been able to man or woman the polls. You know, they didn't have fundamental organizations in place because Liberals had stayed home at the beginning of the campaign. And the third thing was a peculiar one because they had a 40-point program. But somehow he was never able to articulate anything positive. It became a negative campaign. And that coyness of waiting to say how much his program was going to cost was a terrible mistake.
He had only the one issue, basically, in this campaign that was effective, and that was the free trade question. The campaign itself ended a week and a half, went on a week and a half too long. If it
That's
had ended.
what people say.
Sure.
1 week too long to keep the fever boiling.
But he had that one issue. That's all he had going for him. And people were voting essentially not so much for him and for the Liberal Party as they were against free trade.
We'll be back to you. Peter?
All right, Barbara, thanks very much. Knowlton does make that crucial point for the Liberals that the campaign went just a little too long for them, and which brings you back to, well, for the Liberals, perhaps they wish the debate had been a little later than it was in terms of putting it in the middle. A lot of talk about how long the debate was, but not really a lot of talk about where the placement was, and that was a good news for the Tories, time to recover from the debate, David. But also, I think the other point in terms of the one-trick pony, you know, the only one issue he was pushing, John Turner, was the free trade issue. But nevertheless, you know, he did make that decision. Some people, Patrick Gossage has told us in the last couple of days that they were trying to push other issues as well. But Turner decided this was his issue, this was the fight of his life. He wanted to stick on this one issue and to try and coalesce the anti-free trade vote around the Liberals.
But that decision came a little late into the campaign, perhaps. The decision by the Liberal Party, Peter, to go with that 40-point platform, very left-leaning, very costly, at a cost of $30 billion, really was something that became a liability for them. It enabled Mulroney to go after Turner and start talking about the $30 billion man, to present the Liberals as incompetent and so on. So that, I think, was a major mistake in their campaign in retrospect.
Okay, now you've got a number of interesting things for us to look at now in terms of Tory newcomers. We've spent a lot of time talking about some of the Tories who have lost tonight, some prominent people like Flora MacDonald. Tell us about the newcomers.
Well, Peter, the Conservatives will have plenty to choose from in terms of possible newcomers for the cabinet. Let's look at some of the prominent Conservatives they can draw on. Ross Reid, elected tonight in St. John's East, is someone who probably won't make it into an early cabinet thing, but could be a later possible for a later reshuffle, possibly next summer or next year. Another one they can draw on is Gilles Loisel, elected in Longueuil. I used to share an office with him in Paris when he was a foreign correspondent, a strongly nationalist Quebecer. Mulroney's been very successful in getting that type of person into the thing. He would be a very strong possibility for a Quebec City cabinet minister for the Conservatives. No newcomer here. David McDonald, the old veteran red Tory, who's being billed in Tory circles as someone who might take the Minister of State for External Affairs, looking after foreign aid. In Winnipeg South, we have Dorothy Dobie, the first woman president of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce. If Brian Mulroney's looking for prominent new distinguished women to go into his cabinet, she is definitely one of them. And in Regina, Wascana, Larry Schneider, the former Regina mayor, is another possibility. So there is quite a lot to choose from there. In a sense, it's going to be easier for Brian Mulroney to make his cabinet because he has fewer people to choose from, but he's also got enough to get a pretty good lot of talent in there.
Well, you know, there are some holes to fill in that Tory cabinet, but one that won't need to be filled is that one of Deputy Prime Minister and all the other assorted portfolios that are attached to Don Mazankowski's name these days. He's joining us from his riding in Vegreville. Mr. Mazankowski, let me start by congratulating you on your re-election tonight.
Thank you very much, Peter.
So tell me what it all means, Mr. Mazankowski. You got your supporters along there tonight. Tell me what it all means in terms of tonight. You did suffer a lot of losses in different parts of the country. Some familiar faces that you know well won't be coming back this time. But overall, you've got some pretty big numbers to hang up on the wall. You do have the second majority government and the push ahead with free trade. Your thoughts on what tonight's mandate means?
Well, that is indeed unfortunate. I'm really sorry about the cabinet ministers that have gone down to defeat. I guess these things happen in an election, but we're very pleased with the strong mandate that has been given to us to carry on another 4 years, and particularly the clear mandate on the trade agreement and our whole economic policy. The trade is very much involved as part of our economic policy, and so therefore it means that we can continue to build a strong economy and ensure that the regions are well cared for and ensure that there are jobs and opportunities that are created as a result.
So tell me about how the big turnaround happened, because I'm sure you've heard and you've read a lot of articles that suggest that you've been partly responsible for the turnaround in Tory fortunes in the past year and a half. The Prime Minister giving a lot of work for you to do in a number of different portfolios. We run out of all the names of the different portfolios that you have. What do you mark the change in Tory fortunes in the past year or two?
This is all a team effort, and it's sticking to the agenda. And we've done it over the last 4 years, and we did the same thing during the election campaign. And so therefore, if we can continue to stick to our agenda, now that we've been given a clear mandate from the people of Canada, I think you'll see the growth and prosperity in this country continue.
Okay, one last point to you, Mr. Mazankowski, and I guess it's what you say to Canadians who voted against the Tories tonight. As you've seen, it's somewhere around 56, 57%. A lot of them will say that they voted against you because of free trade. The free trade deal does go ahead, but do you think there will be some need to hold out an olive branch to those people who you know felt very emotional and very passionate about their argument on this deal? What do you say to them tonight?
Well, the Prime Minister has been very successful in uniting the country and healing the wounds of the nation. When you go back to that period of 80 to 84, the country was divided, there was animosity and acrimony, and he has removed that, and he has tremendous skills in that regard, and I have no hesitation in saying that he will perform equally as well in this 4-year period.
All right, Mr. Mazankowski, we thank you for taking some time to talk with us tonight. I know you got a nice little party going on there in the background. They love those parties in Vegreville.
Wish you were here. Wish you were here, Peter.
Okay. Thanks again. Okay, let's update the latest situation out in British Columbia. Don Newman has been watching the tallies go up on the board in BC. What's the latest, Don?
Peter, the NDP are continuing to run very strongly in British Columbia. They said they would, and that indeed is what they're doing. We're going to take a look specifically in a moment at the area of the Okanagan, but first let's see how they are standing. The NDP have picked up 12 seats, all of them from the Tories. As you can see there, the Liberals just holding on to Vancouver Quadra, John Turner's riding. The total vote in BC, though, tells quite an interesting story. It tells that it's actually not as much the NDP and the Liberals who are hurting the Tories as it is other parties. For instance, the NDP and the Tories are running almost neck and neck, but look at that. The NDP are almost the same as they were 4 years ago. The Tories have dropped 11%, and a lot of that vote has gone to the Western Reform Party and the Christian Heritage Party, two parties to the right of the Conservative Party, but in fact they're electing a lot of NDP members tonight. In the Okanagan Centre, this is a new riding that it takes in mainly the city of Kelowna, though. The Tories are holding on at the moment. Al Horning is an alderman in Kelowna, and he is leading Brian McIver, who has run provincially before for the NDP, a margin there of 335 votes. Another Okanagan riding, Okanagan-Shuswap, it is Lyle McWilliams of the NDP. He has represented the area provincially before, and he is holding a lead at the moment of 547 votes over Jake Spoor, who owns an orchard in the area. Part of this riding used to belong to Nelson Rees, and it was called Kamloops-Shuswap, so the NDP doing well there is not that big a surprise. In Okanagan-Similkameen Merritt, Fred King, who was an MP in the last parliament, the last couple of parliaments, is holding a lead of only 7 votes at the moment over Jack Whitaker, who's been involved in municipal politics in Osoyoos. That is a very close race. And let me show you one other riding from BC, not from the Okanagan, Vancouver South. The Speaker of the House of Commons, the first one elected by MPs, has been elected tonight again in his own riding of Vancouver South. Even though he ran a non-partisan campaign, he wouldn't take part in any of the political issues, Peter. He said as Speaker, he had to be non-partisan. He ran on the Tory ticket, though, and he's been re-elected.
All right. In terms of John Fraser, though, he doesn't automatically become the new Speaker, does he?
Well, no, this is just his first election. He now has to win a second election in the House of Commons. Anybody can run for Speaker in the House of Commons if they don't take their name off the ballot. Although he can at least argue that he has some experience, which is more than most people can say in the House of Commons these days. But there will be a second election. It'll take place as soon as the Prime Minister calls the House back.
Don, it's fascinating looking at how the seats are falling into place for the NDP in BC to see that part of the reason is why they're having classic two-way races here. What really worried New Democrats during the campaign when they saw the Liberals up to 26, 27, even 30% in the opinion polls during the campaign, that would eat into their vote, but they've fallen way back, the Liberals, Liberals. Now, basically the reason the NDP are doing so well there is that these are classic two-way rather than three-way races.
Well, actually the Liberal vote is up a little, but it's not up as much as the votes of the Western Reform and the Christian Heritage Party. So while the NDP really haven't gone anywhere in terms of increasing their vote from 4 years ago, the Tories have been losing a lot of votes, not few to the Liberals, but particularly to these other parties that are to the right of the Tories. And that's really what is giving the NDP the big boost up.
All right, I want to talk about a couple of things right now, because we're getting ready for two things to happen in the next little while. You'll see John Turner going before an audience in Vancouver Quadra in his riding to thank his supporters for his re-election tonight. But he will use that opportunity also to address the nation and to talk to Canadians from coast to coast, many of whom have supported his party tonight. They've more than doubled their seats, and that is to his credit. But yet, nevertheless, the Conservatives have won a majority government. We will also be seeing the Conservative leader and the Prime Minister, Brian Mulroney, address the crowd in Charlevoix at Baie-Comeau, at his hometown tonight. It's always interesting to see what happens, who speaks first in a situation like this. One assumes Brian Mulroney is waiting for John Turner to speak first, although you can never be sure on those assumptions until it actually happens. Well, here we go, live to Baie-Comeau. Brian Mulroney and Milo Mulroney taking a walk. It's been very snowy out there today in Baie-Comeau, heading up towards the, let's see, they're getting into the campaign bus. There's a bus that Wendy Mesley knows inside and out, because she spent most of the past 7 weeks hurtling back and forth across the country on it. The Mulroneys getting in the bus, heading over to the arena in Baie-Comeau, where they will be, where the Prime Minister will be making his comments to the nation as well. Wendy, David, Eric, Don, it gets back to this question, obviously a night for rejoicing for the Tories. They've made some history tonight, but it was the kind of campaign where a lot of emotions and passions were drawn out. And one does have to wonder, you know, Don Mazankowski sort of hinted at it tonight, that he expects the Prime Minister to play his conciliator's card here to try, and he's never going to get those people's votes, but he does have to get them on side somehow if the bitter divisions are to stop. Wendy.
Seeing that bus again, I lived on that bus for 1.5 months, and it reminds me of every time that we went to an event, just how emotional the free trade debate became. Everywhere we went, there were protesters, there were hecklers in the room. Sometimes people would get into squabbles outside on the sidewalk, and I'm sure that Brian Mulroney knows that there is a lot of healing to be done with this huge majority tonight. I think he's got to reassure all the Canadians that voted against free trade in this election that they will be taken care of, and that he is aware of their concerns. But obviously this is a big moment for him tonight. No other Tory leader has ever succeeded in putting down roots in the province of Quebec. He's a native son, never let Quebecers forget it, and it's paid off.
All right, well, we'll pick up this discussion in just a few moments' time, but the former Prime Minister, Joe Clark, has joined us from his Yellowhead riding tonight, where he has been declared re-elected. And Mr. Clark, I congratulate you on the one hand, but you were warning us over the past couple of weeks. We were in a tight race there with Preston Manning, and it looked that way for most of the evening.
I was very pleased to have the support of the people of Yellowhead. Yeah, we had a tight race, but I think the election has been a good result for the country and a good result for this constituency.
And we notice, as I'm sure you've talked to Maureen McTeer in the past couple of hours, the Husband and Wife Act in the House of Commons, unfortunately, I guess for you, is not going to happen, but it was close there for a while. What did you have to say to Maureen?
Well, she would have been a first-class member of Parliament. She fought a tough campaign, and she didn't win. And but she did very well, and I'm naturally disappointed she didn't win, but that happens in politics, and there may well be other opportunities in the future.
All right, let's get back to the big picture now. We were just having a discussion when you joined us about how the Prime Minister handles the speech to the nation. He's just left his hotel, heading over to the arena in Baie-Comeau. Surely, we all acknowledge that the fact the Tories have won the second majority government in a row, history in the making here tonight for Tories in this century, but you're an old politician. You've seen the bitter divisions that have come up in the country back and forth over this campaign on the free trade issue. How does he and how do you reach out to Canadians who voted against you on this particular election because of the free trade deal and the emotion and the passion that it has instilled? How do you reach out? Can you reach out?
Well, remember, one of the skills of this government and of this Prime Minister is precisely in reconciling differences in the country. When we were elected in 1984, there were deep divisions in Canada. We had to deal with them, and we did. There may well be divisions that endure beyond the election campaign. We'll deal with them. We have a mandate in the election. There was obviously some disagreement, a lot of misunderstanding about what we were trying to do. But there is a mandate to carry on with the program that we proposed in the election, and we'll do that, and we'll do it in the spirit of bringing the country together that has guided the first 4 years of this government.
Mr. Clark, we do thank you for joining us tonight. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, Joe Clark joining us from his successful re-election headquarters in Yellowhead in Alberta, where he won his seat once again tonight. Now, the overall numbers, we have them with the Tories somewhere in the over 170 range. There they are at 170, the Liberals at 82, the NDP at 43. We'll be back in a moment. All right, that was an opportunity for some stations across the network to jump out of our coverage and give some local results, but I know that many of you are staying with us now, especially in different parts of the country where you've got all the local results that you needed to hear from. I want to pick up that conversation once again in terms of what to expect from the Prime Minister tonight, and who'd like to jump in this with some thoughts now? Eric Melling, you've been watching this race from an interesting point of view over the past couple of months. You've seen those kind of divisions too. What do you think?
Well, you stand back and look at this campaign, you know, and I think we all grew up, people of our generation, with the notion that we had the second highest standard of living in the world, and perhaps unless you live in pockets of Ontario, I don't think people feel that way anymore. There's some fear that we might be losing it, and we've been very indulgent in this country. We've run up some big deficits, and you know, the opposition talks about industrial strategy. It's never worked. I think that if we haven't been able to discipline ourselves, the Americans are going to apply that discipline for us. And something else with regard to the confusion, you know, behind Mulroney, you had people like Mazinkowski, Joe Clark, Mike Wilson, Raina Tishin, who was defeated, unfortunately. But these are guys, sensible guys, represented small-town values. People remember the liberal whiz kids with the PhDs from the big schools who gave us lost $2 billion on Canadair and $3 billion on research tax credits and some of the other grand schemes. These people may have been riding on a wave of American prosperity, but they managed it well.
Okay, well, listen, we're going to keep this discussion going because I know Don Newman wants to jump in on it, but while we're discussing, we're going to show you some pictures from Baie-Comeau where the crowd is getting whipped up into a frenzy awaiting the arrival of Prime Minister Mulroney. We saw him leaving by bus just a few moments ago. A little bit of a laser show going on there in the arena in Baie-Comeau. Bill Casey, you're there. If you can hear me, it looks like quite an event they've got in store.
You hear that?
I guess Bill can't hear us right now. Not surprising. Sounds like quite the party going on there already as they wait for the arrival of Brian Mulroney.
Okay, I can hear you now, Peter.
Oh, you can. Go ahead, Bill.
We just got here. I watched the motorcade begin at the chalet at the Manoir Hotel, and it's on its way down here. People are waiting very patiently. The laser show is going on overhead, and it's sort of a subdued kind of anticipation right now, waiting for the big event, the arrival of Brian Mulroney.
Okay, well, as soon as the Prime Minister does arrive in Baie-Comeau, of course, we will cut live to the arena to watch the sight going on. There's probably no way of duplicating the excitement that was in that very same arena a little over 4 years ago when the Tory forces won their first huge majority government. But once again, as soon as the Prime Minister arrives back there, we will once again join the action in Baie-Comeau. Don Newman, I know you wanted to make this point on what to expect tonight, how the Prime Minister does, if he chooses to reach out to try and assuage or convince the people who voted against him tonight that he's not out to sell the country.
Well, I think the Prime Minister will be magnanimous in victory. That is certainly his style, the style of Canadian politicians when they do win big victories. I think in terms of a political issue, it depends as much on John Turner and Ed Broadbent right away how the country reacts to this. Turner had said when he had the Senate stop passage of the legislation last summer that if Mulroney could get his majority, that was it. He'd let it go through very quickly. When we get back in the House of Commons in a couple of weeks, we'll see how the Liberals feel about that. Lloyd Axworthy was telling you earlier tonight that he wasn't quite clear on what the party's strategy would be. And Ed Broadbent, in his remarks, said he was going to continue to fight. He didn't mention free trade specifically, but if indeed the opposition parties want to continue fighting the issue of the election,
Yeah, the bus is here, Nancy. The bus is here now.
Yep. That's Paul Workman talking to us from Baie-Comeau as we see the Mulrooney buses arriving at the arena site there. So you just see inside the bus there behind all these gentlemen. I think we saw Mila Mulrooney getting ready. There she is, getting ready to come off the bus. Or was that Bonnie Brownlee? That's Bonnie Brownlee, who works for Mila Mulrooney in the Prime Minister's office, helping in the scheduling and the events that Mrs. Mulrooney takes part in. Anyway, we'll keep watching these pictures as we continue on our discussion. There's Senator Michel Carger, who will be a happy man tonight. He was the architect of much of the action for the Tories in Quebec over the past 7 weeks, and he certainly did deliver the seats he claimed he would, although there were times during this campaign where he sounded a little worried himself, David.
Well, I think if there's anyone who wasn't surprised by the result tonight, Peter, was Brian Mulrooney himself. You know, a kind of confidence seized him about 10 days ago when it was clear that his internal polls were showing that the Conservatives were recovering very strongly after that slump during the TV debates. Brian Mulrooney knew that he was going to win. You could see it in the confidence that he manages to project, and also in the decision to go back and sort of to be himself. The old thing, let Brian be Brian. He wasn't going to be cocooned anymore. He wasn't going to stick to text that much. He really fought back at John Turner. I think Canadians saw a much more real Brian Mulrooney in the final 2 weeks of the campaign than that early phase in the 2 weeks when he was trying to play the statesman, sticking to his text, and really not being the Brian Mulrooney we know.
All right, I've just been handed an interesting figure. You know, you can never really tell this figure until the end of the evening, and that's what the turnout's like overall across the nation. Remember last time it was around 75, 76%, about 3/4 of Canadians going out to vote in our national election. We can be proud of that number, especially when we look at what happened south of the border in the United States. They just went through a presidential election where the turnout figure was about 50%. We're told that this time out in 1988, we are around the same number, about 3/4 turnout, about 75%. Now that is a good number, and I know, David, every time I say that, you like to tell me that. Go ahead.
Well, it's very surprising, Peter, that this is really very much the Canadian average. You would have thought that an election fought on this burning and divisive issue of free trade would have produced a bigger turnout in it. 75, 76% is about the overall Canadian average. I'm very surprised that there wasn't a bigger turnout today.
Now, we always do tend to, in some ways, compare ourselves to the Americans, and we can be proud that more of us turn out on our vote. But overall, in Western nations, we're ranking down there.
Well, it's surprising, as I say, you know, we like to slap ourselves on the back and say we've got a very healthy turnout in Canada, but when you look at the statistics for the 28 major Western democracies, Canada's way, way down on the list for turnout on votes.
All right. Well, don't go away, because any moment now, Prime Minister Mulrooney will be entering the arena in Baie-Comeau, and we'll be hearing what he has to say to the nation. And once again, we welcome you back. For those of you who have just broken away for some local updates in terms of the ridings and the races in your particular area, we're back here in Toronto awaiting the arrival inside the arena in Baie-Comeau of Prime Minister Mulrooney and his address to the nation following his second majority government win in a row. The overall numbers as we see them right now: 170 Tories, either leading or elected, 82 Liberals, 43 for the NDP. This last story to unfold during the evening has been the situation in British Columbia, and Don Newman has been following that story. Don.
And Peter, the story continues to be how well the NDP is doing in British Columbia, taking the lion's share of the seats so far. Let's take a look at the party standings as we look out on the West Coast. You can see that the NDP have now got a 7-seat lead over the Tories, and the last time around it was 24 seats for the Tories and 7 for the NDP if you redistributed the vote over the new extra 4 ridings to give us the 32 in BC. The total vote, though, tells a very interesting story in British Columbia tonight. It explains very closely how the Tories and the NDP are running neck and neck in terms of the total vote. And if you compare that with 4 years ago, well, the NDP are only doing 1% better, while the Tories are doing 11% worse. And the reason for that is, as we've said before, the right-wing fringe parties, the Western Reform Party and the Christian Heritage Party, taking a lot of Tory votes and electing some NDP members tonight. Let's take a look at some of the races, though. Here's an NDP riding that, or rather a Conservative who didn't get knocked off by the NDP's Cabinet Minister Frank Oberle, the Minister of Science and Technology. He is run in Prince George Peace River. Another cabinet minister who's withstood the NDP surge tonight in BC is Tom Sidden, the Minister of Fisheries. He is re-elected in his riding of Richmond, a riding cut in half by redistribution, but he's doing all right there. However, one other cabinet minister did not fare so well towards the NDP tonight, and that is Jerry St. Germain. He has been in the cabinet only for this year, and he is losing his seat in the House of Commons tonight to Joy Langan. Jerry St. Germain, who was elected to the House of Commons at the same time Brian Mulroney was in the by-election in 1983. He will not be going back to Ottawa tonight. He will not be joining that big Tory majority again, Peter. The NDP have knocked him off.
All right, well, if you look at our overall numbers, you can tell, if you add all this up, it comes to 295, and that's the exact number of seats in the new House of Commons. Still, a number of ridings in BC, as Don mentioned, where we have not called the race. There's only one other riding right across the country, and that's in the Ontario riding of Northumberland. That has been real close all night. The Tories are out ahead at this point, but only by a couple hundred votes.
Prime Minister's coming in now, Peter.
Okay, Paul, see if we can get a chat with him.
Hello,
there.
Prime Minister. Is this one as satisfying as 1984? Prime Minister.
Pardon?
Quel est le facteur principal? À quoi vous devez cette victoire?
La population canadienne.
Is this a satisfying?
Elle a voté de façon majoritaire en faveur de notre gouvernement. Les candidats et candidates.
I voted
Is this as satisfying as 1984?
for a new majority government.
They're all great challenges, and it's very nice.
Do you feel a sense of vindication as well as triumph tonight?
I just feel very gratified, very humbled by the support of the people of Canada. It's just a delight.
Well, the Prime Minister offering a few words there as he gets ready to go in to speak to the crowd assembled in the arena in Baie-Comeau, the same arena where he spoke a little over 4 years ago on his first victory. Prime Minister saying he's a little bit humbled and gratified by the voting of Canadians today that has given him another majority government. And while we do talk about the Tory losses that were suffered tonight, and there were some significant ones, you can't take it away from him. 170 seats by anybody's standards is a pretty solid majority government. Now, if you're wondering why you're only hearing smattered applause here, these are the lucky ones that got to meet the Prime Minister before he goes into the main arena where the big crowd is waiting. Brian and Mila Mulroney and a couple of the kids there as well. Been very much a family affair in many parts of the cross-Canada touring. Wendy Mesley was on the plane most of the time. How often were the children on those campaign flights?
Not very often. I missed a week or two of the campaign, but when I was there, Nicholas and the kids came out his first visit to Baie-Comeau. I think they went back at the end as well. Mila was at his side throughout. As we saw him walking through that corridor there, those aren't big names in Quebec politics. Those are mostly the boys from Baie-Comeau, people that he went to school with, and he has remained in touch with a lot of these people, and they're out very obviously happy for him this evening.
Now, this has become a part of the Conservative campaign action in the last couple of weeks of the campaign, the laser shows and the excitement built into all the events. As soon as the Prime Minister heads up towards the podium, he's in a side room right now, we'll join him. There's still some discussion of what the situation might be out in Vancouver, just who goes to speak first now. One can assume, I think, at this point in the evening, that it's more than likely that Mulroney and Turner have talked to each other, at least on the phone. They do try to schedule these things so they don't both end up talking at the same time. We are assuming, just simply by where people are right now, that Brian Mulroney will be speaking first, but you're never sure of those things. We have our cameras set up in Vancouver, of course, as well, and as soon as we see John Turner, we'll be cutting our pictures towards them. Well, Brian Mulroney entering the arena in Baie-Comeau now, to the cheers and the handshakes of a lot of different Tory supporters. I guess for all the candidates running in this election, whether they're leaders or candidates just at the local level, they've shaken a lot of hands over the last 7 weeks, and in many ways, now that it's all over, they'll be able to get a bit of a rest. Brian Mulroney, though, David not planning a long rest, calling the House of Commons back within a couple of weeks. In fact, the shortest period of time he can. You have to wait for a certain amount of time for the writs to come in from across the country before the House can be called. They're looking at December 12th.
December 12th is the target date, Peter, and then the thinking is that once the free trade agreement is passed in the House of Commons, that Brian Mulroney will prorogue Parliament, have a new session, maybe as late as late February or mid-March. Plenty of time to prepare a new throne speech, get the government's legislative program together, but we won't see the usual February budget. It's quite certain now that that budget will be put off at least a month. Mulroney savoring his triumph here. Certainly a politician who's shown an incredible amount of resilience over the past 4 years, Peter. When you think of the Mulroney that we saw 2 years after the election, mired in scandal, he'd seemingly lost control of the government agenda, but he put it all back together again. He managed to clean out his office, put new people in. This is a politician who knows how to learn his lessons, who's proved extraordinarily resilient.
Feels great, thank you.
All right, Wendy, you watched all this very closely over these past few weeks as well. You've seen a few scenes like this in the last 7 weeks.
Well, actually, the only time that you get to see the laser beams, that kind of show, is in Quebec. There was very much a debate going on between the Quebec organizers and the organizers from the Big Blue Machine, the Bill Davis machine. In Quebec, he took off the wraps, he took off his glasses, and he let the Irish blood, the Blarney, flow a little bit more than he did in the rest of the country, particularly in the second half of the campaign. It has been said that there is more of a bond between Irish Quebecers than other Anglo-Quebecers because they're Catholics. He certainly has established a strong bond with Francophone Quebecers, and we're seeing some of that in his hometown of Baie-Comeau tonight. This is where, of course, he was a truck driver. His father was an engineer. His mother is still alive. She's probably watching from Montreal this evening. Now, there's a flag that we saw an awful lot in this campaign behind both John Turner and Brian Mulroney. That's the Quebec theme song. Continuons dans le bon sens. Let's keep going in the right direction. It's an upbeat, very disco song that it became very popular very quickly. I wouldn't be surprised to see that picked up. Survive past this campaign, perhaps.
Well, it's a certain degree of excitement there, and that's not unexpected, but it's not quite the same kind of scene as we saw 4 years ago when they were going crazy over the big success, the huge success, and the first Tory majority government in so many years. But a little more subdued there tonight. Maybe they're getting used to it already.
Peter, I can't help thinking of the words of a senior Conservative I talked to just a few days after the last election, who said that Brian Mulroney was both the biggest asset and potentially the biggest liability of the Conservative Party. We saw in that first 18-month period a Prime Minister who seemed to be vacillating, who, as I said earlier, didn't seem to have control of the agenda, whose government was widely perceived as mired in scandal, and yet at the same time he is the greatest potential asset of the Conservative Party when you think what he's done in terms of really changing the fundamental nature of the Conservative Party in Canada, giving it that strong French-Canadian base which it's never had for many, many years. That is an extraordinary achievement. He has, I think, perhaps revolutionized Canadian politics, and we may be seeing the beginning of a Tory dynasty in Canada.
Well, the Prime Minister getting those what have become very familiar reading glasses ready as he gets set to speak to the crowd here in Baie-Comeau, but also he knows, of course, that the cameras of the nation are trained on him tonight, and he will be speaking not just to Baie-Comeau, but to the country as a whole, and we'll be listening and watching the speech very closely. On the other side of the country, out on the West Coast, John Turner, one assumes in his hotel room or in one of the organizers' rooms, either watching this or preparing his own notes for tonight. He has his own decisions to make about what he tells the Canadian people this evening as well. Let's go to Baie-Comeau. Let's listen to a little of the atmosphere as the Prime Minister prepares to address the nation.
Dear friends,
Chers amis,
my dear friends,
dear friends, encore une fois,
once again, Baie-Comeau had a meeting with history,
nous l'avons tenu.
and we kept this meeting. This evening, from the bottom of my heart, I would like to thank all the citizens of Charlevoix who shared our ideal of progress and openness and unity for Canada. And in a very special way, I would like to thank Gérard Guy and his wonderful team of volunteers who ensured our great victory this evening in the constituency of Charlevoix.
I want to speak to the candidates and the supporters of all parties who have tonight experienced both the joys and the sadness that democracy brings. I congratulate the members of the Progressive Conservative Party whose election in every region of Canada have given the Progressive Conservative government our second consecutive majority mandate. I express my sympathy with those candidates of my own party who were not successful tonight. For many of you, there will be another day. For all of you, there is the certain knowledge that you have stood not only in a campaign, but in a cause and have rendered significant service to Canada. To all of the candidates of all parties, both elected and defeated, all of you are to be commended for your commitment to democracy and for your love of Canada, which you have served so well tonight. To the leaders of the Liberal and the New Democratic parties, Mr. Turner and Mr. Broadbent, I congratulate them very sincerely on a hard-fought campaign. Because the issues were historic, the campaign was especially challenging, and I know how tough it is to lead a national political party, and I thought that they fought hard and they fought well, and I wish them and their families every good wish tonight on behalf of all Canadians. But however impassioned the debate, this campaign has shown that Canadians agree on what it is that we cherish most in our national life: our sovereignty, the protection of minority rights, our unique social programs, our concern for the environment, our commitment to regional development. These have their source in a Canadian tradition of tolerance and sharing. The election then was not about those values and those things that divide us, but the means to give greater effect to the values that we hold so dear. And so now it is a time for healing in the land. For in the end, irrespective of party preference, we are all Canadians. We all love our country. Nous sommes tous des Canadiens.
We are all Canadians, and we all love our country, Canada, and we Canadians have said with confidence, they have indicated the road that they wish to follow. They have accorded us the necessary mandate and majority for a second term. They have spoken in a loud and clear voice of their desire for unity.
Is all about. We will now, with the mandate, proceed with free trade. We will proceed with the Meech Lake Accord. We will proceed to bring greater unity and harmony and prosperity to Canada.
The Free Trade Agreement and the Meech Lake Agreement are the principal instruments of our prosperity and our unity. They are the striking reaffirmation of this new spirit of national reconciliation, of economic renewal, which will benefit us all.
Is to achieve not just more prosperity, but more opportunity and security for all Canadians. La route de l'unité.
The road to unity, the only viable road, the only one which is part of our historic legitimacy and our political development as well as our economic development. This is indeed the real meaning of the mandate which has been given to us, a mandate of unity, of equality, of tolerance, and of openness to the rest of the world. Our country this evening has respected the requirements of the future and has responded to the call of that which is best in itself. Canada today has chosen to indicate its pride, its realism, its maturity, and its self-confidence.
We pledge to Canadians a competent and a caring government and a vision for a competitive and a compassionate society, a vision of a forward-looking and outward-looking country, a nation whose people are confident of their identity as Canadians, confident of their ability to compete with the best in the world. Comme un fils de Bécomo,
as the first in Bécomo and on the north coast, I can say with pride this evening how honored I am to be the member for Charlevoix and the re-elected Prime Minister of Canada. We are picking up the shield again with pride, knowing that together we are going to build a more prosperous Canada, more tolerant and more unified. And inside this Canada, you will find a strong Quebec, strong provinces, and a lasting unity and a solid unity for all of Canada.
So, tonight is a night about unity. It is a night about Canada, the splendor of our nation, the coming together of East and West, the Atlantic provinces, the West, the great industrial heartland of Ontario, and the province of Quebec, coming together in a great affirmation of solidarity and unity, and saying to Canada and saying to the world, we are a proud nation that stands before you, one Canada with fairness and equality of opportunity for all Canadians from Newfoundland and Labrador to British Columbia. That is the message of tonight. Voilà l'enjeu et le résultat.
This is the result of the election, Canadian unity.
Well, very proud and confident Brian Mulroney addressing the crowd in Baie-Comeau, but of course addressing the nation as well, saying the message tonight was one of unity. His government will proceed immediately with free trade. It will proceed along the Meech Lake Accord line. The idea is harmony and prosperity on the road to victory. A tune we became accustomed to during the past 4 years. When Irish Eyes Are Smiling, we've seen the Prime Minister sing that one before. It's had some accompaniment over the years as well in the past. Here come the blue and white balloons floating down the Tory blue color. It used to be Liberal red all over Quebec. It's Tory blue quite a bit over Quebec tonight and in many other parts of the country. Prime Minister arguing that the mandate he's got tonight is a nationally based one, and that is true. There are ridings, Tory ridings, in every province of the country, with the exception, I believe, of Prince Edward Island, where it was a clean four-seat sweep for the Liberals. No Tories elected tonight on Prince Edward Island.
But the really extraordinary feat, Peter, when you think of it, is managing to pull off that victory in Ontario as well. You know, there are a lot of people fearing a kind of nightmare polarization of the country with Quebec solidly behind Mulroney, but Ontario going Liberal, and some of Mulroney's own cabinet ministers were warning that this could lead to an increase in separatism in Quebec, but there's none of that polarization, a solidly based majority in both Ontario and Quebec. That's a major achievement.
Well, they're having fun with the balloons tonight. You must wonder, though, it's a grueling campaign for anybody involved in it, all the candidates. The Prime Minister, of course, just one of more than 1,000 who ran for office tonight. A grueling 7-week experience. I'm sure they're looking forward to the end of this evening just to grab a little rest. It's been a tough personal campaign, too. A lot of tough words said about all three leaders by each other, on each other, and that always affects families as well. You must realize that for the spouses and children of all candidates, these can be tough times as well. Just as it has been for the Prime Minister's kids, the same goes for the children of the other leaders as well. Prime Minister sure looks like he's having a good time tonight. That'll be soccer next for the Brian Mulroney clan. We will let stations along the network know if they want to take the opportunity for the regional break, they can take it in the next 10 seconds. And we're going to stay with these pictures from Baie-Comeau. So if you want to take a regional break now to update your viewers on what's happening, go ahead now.
We decided when.
And for the rest of you who've chosen to stay with us, we continue our live coverage. This is the event in Baie-Comeau. They're having a good time with the balloons out there. The Prime Minister shaking a few hands on the way out. A short speech, interesting tonight. We saw a rather short speech from Ed Broadbent as well. Brian Mulroney keeping very close to the line here in the sense of they will proceed. This is the mandate he was looking for, a mandate broadly based across the country with that one exception, and we do mention that the Prime Minister did not get seats for the Conservative Party on Prince Edward Island. Prime Minister now having the opportunity to talk to some of the other networks who weren't able to get him going into the building as we did. And we appreciate him stopping to talk to all Canadians, not just the ones who watch the CBC.
I feel terrific. I feel terrific. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you. Well, a happy man there we see, and a bit of history for the Conservatives. The first time this century a Tory leader's put back-to-back majority governments in place. Can't tell you one string that he does keep going, though, that for every Prime Minister who has called for an election in November through the history of this country, they've always won. Wilfrid Laurier did it twice. That's right. And Lester Pearson did it once. Brian Mulroney adds to that string. So November is obviously the kind of month you'd like.
We can probably look forward to quite a number of November elections given the trend that's developing, Peter.
Well, I can tell you from the calls that I've heard around the place where the people have been covering elections, I don't know whether it's such a hot idea after all. Paul Workman in the crush there trying to get a question in the Prime Minister. I think he feels he's said his piece for the night. He's chasing those balloons right around the arena.
No Prime Minister, so many cabinet tonight.
No, he's not answering any more questions. Eric Malling, I know you want to jump in here and make a comment as well.
These reporters today complaining about getting calls going up to Baie-Comeau, Wendy. I was there in '76 doing a documentary when Mulroney ran for the Conservative leadership the first time. We got snowed in. There was one motel, it was very drafty, and we spent a long time in Baie-Comeau. Those were the days.
One thing we should mention, by the way, for Brian Mulroney, he wanted to rack up the biggest majority of any MP running tonight, and he succeeded in that one as well. When all the votes have been counted now in Charlevoix, the riding he's running in, he's got more than 80%, or exactly 80% of the vote tabulated in Charlevoix. That's a rather convincing victory for Brian Mulroney, to say the least, in his own riding of Charlevoix. Here are the numbers from Charlevoix. The Tory leader racking up over 33,000 votes. That represents 80% of the vote counted in Charlevoix. The Liberal placing a distant second, and the NDP even further back in third place. Now, we should advise our viewers that while we have heard from Ed Broadbent and we have heard from Brian Mulroney, we are still awaiting the arrival in Vancouver at the Liberal Party headquarters of John Turner, and that will be a speech which will be more than a little bit interesting. You look at the overall numbers, they've changed slightly. There have been a couple of tight races going on in the country. They've changed slightly since we last saw them before the Prime Minister spoke. The Conservatives now at the leading and elected point of 169. There still are a couple of seats in BC that haven't been declared yet. The Liberals at 82, the NDP at 44. We can now sort of spin our thoughts into thinking and considering what we can expect from John Turner tonight. 82 seats. He's lost the fight of his life, but he's more than doubled the number of seats that the Liberals have in the House of Commons. That's the good news. The bad news, well, the good news goes further. He's also re-established his party as the clear second choice of Canadians. That base is firm. It was questionable just a few weeks ago when many people at the most senior levels of the Liberal Party, even what Turner's pollster, Martin Goldfarb, had written a book that was published in the first couple of weeks of the campaign saying that the party was on the road to oblivion. Well, it certainly isn't. They're still firmly in second place, but he has lost what he described himself as the cause and the fight of his life, David. One wonders what happens now in terms of the future for John Turner. There was some expectation that you might even hear some form of goodbye on the stage tonight in Vancouver. I somehow doubt that. I think, at least for the short term, in the near future, Turner will stay in charge while the party in many ways decides internally what it wants to do. A lot of things, good things on the Liberal side tonight. Breakthrough in Manitoba, all those seats in Winnipeg.
No, I agree. I'm not expecting an immediate decision from John Turner, Peter, now on his future. I think he will wait a certain period of time. But you mentioned, that certain Liberals were saying they were on the road to oblivion. But in the first 2 weeks of this campaign, when those polls came out showing the Liberals in third place, it did look very much as if they were on the road to oblivion. But somehow Turner pulled it out by an extremely courageous campaign, a great deal of grace under pressure, even in those first 2 weeks when the polls were showing him in third place, showed tremendously improved performance over 84, which the media didn't pick up because I think they were too much influenced by those polls.
Okay, quick point from Don Newman on this.
Well, I don't know if we'll hear the goodbye from John Turner tonight, Peter, but I think we'll hear it pretty soon. I don't think that he'll want to stay on too much longer. He said that one of the jobs he had was to rebuild the Liberal Party. I think he'll be able to argue that that indeed is what he has done. And I think that he'll be glad to step out of the leadership in pretty short order. I think when the leadership race to succeed him begins, one of the issues that we're going to see is the Meech Lake Accord. It's an issue that has been splitting the Liberal Party quietly behind the scenes. And Mr. Turner coming out now, well, I guess we'll get a pretty good idea what he's going to say in just a minute, Peter.
Turner. Let's hear what he has to say now. Well, he obviously doesn't want to talk to reporters quite yet. He gets in the limousine outside the Hotel Vancouver. He's now heading over to the Liberal Party headquarters in Vancouver Quadra, the riding he ran in, and he will have his comments there. It's a short ride, so we won't have to wait too long. Wendy Mesley, you wanted to pick up a point on this in terms of John Turner. Can you make it in... Well, first of all, why don't you wait for it, because we're just going to summarize as we get our local stations back in order. Join us again in a few moments' time. The overall numbers as we look at them now on our little mini board in terms of what's happened tonight. We have the Conservatives leading in elected in 169 seats, the Liberals in 82, the NDP in 44. The story of the evening, of course, the Conservatives won a second majority government in a row, first time this century for a Tory leader, but we still await the words from John Turner tonight. We'll be hearing them very shortly. We'll be back in a moment. All right, we welcome you back. To those of you who have just departed for a couple of minutes, any moment now, John Turner will be arriving at his headquarters in Vancouver for a speech to his workers and a speech to an anxious nation waiting to hear the words of John Turner, who in many ways did, in fact, lead the fight tonight, or the fight throughout this campaign on free trade. The very fact that his party ended up considerably further ahead than the NDP is an indication of Canadians who were fighting against free trade chose to throw their vote in the direction of the Liberal Party. And one can also say that earlier this year it was John Turner who in many ways forced a fall election vote with the big Senate gambit of having the Liberal-dominated Senate stall the free trade bill until Canadians had a chance to vote on this issue. As we said, a few moments yet before we get a chance to see John Turner and hear from him once again. And while we wait, let's check in on an interesting experiment we had going here tonight, just outside of Toronto in a bar in Brampton. A special little computer was all set up to gauge people's thoughts and emotions tonight on the night of election time in Canada. Kevin Evans was standing by. Let's see what Kevin came up with. Kevin?
Monday night at Jake's Boathouse in Brampton, Ontario. Ordinarily, this is football night, but something is happening here in the country, and Canadians here, as everywhere, are in front of their television sets. Say hello to the millions of Canadians now who are looking at you, fine people. Now, this has been a campaign that has been full of polls. Are you suffering from poll fatigue? Does plus or minus 2% 19 times out of 20 give you a headache? Yeah. Are you yearning for those days when a simple show of hands was enough? Yeah. Well, have we got something for you tonight? I thought you might say that. We have hooked up, courtesy of computer technology, and this handy-dandy little device, which patrons in bars, more than 100 bars across the country, have used. This generally is used for predicting football games and participating in trivia scores, this computer network, but tonight we've snuck in a couple of questions about the federal election, and here are some of the responses we got from 102 bars, and we know that's really where the decisions in this country are made. This was the response in those bars. All right. First of all, was the election campaign exciting, boring? And two, negative. 37% said it was boring. What do they say at Jake's Boathouse? No! Well, that's a hard one to sort of figure out. I guess that's 37% said it was boring. We also asked people at about 102 bars across the country, do you understand free trade? The issue of this campaign. As you can see, 33% said a little bit more. 20% said, I am more confused. Could we hear at Jake's Boathouse from those of you who are more confused? Yeah! Now, what about the party leaders? And the question of respect, you'll see 31% said, I now respect them less. 0 said there's no change. 9%, I now respect them more. How many of you here respect your party leaders less tonight? Yeah! All right, finally, what decided your vote? We were told the issue in this campaign was free trade. Interestingly enough, 38% said free trade, but 34% said other issues, which begs the question about what would have happened had other issues in this campaign reached the same kind of profile as free trade. And there you have it. That is the view from bars across this country and from Jake's Boathouse in Brampton, Ontario. Back to you, Peter.
All right, Kevin, that was very good. You should be running for office as well as running that little panel out there at Jake's Boathouse. That was very good. Okay, a couple of things to update you on very quickly. First of all, the Prime Minister has scheduled a news conference for tomorrow afternoon, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. We will be covering that live. His first news conference of his new mandate. In fact, it's the first news conference, a regular scheduled one that he's had, what, in about 2 years now, David? Okay, that will be broadcast live on the CBC tomorrow, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. We're waiting for John Turner to arrive to speak to his supporters and the nation. That's coming up in the next little while. Keith Bogue, who's been covering John Turner throughout the campaign, is out there in Vancouver now. Keith, any indication of what we've got in store from the Turner speech tonight?
Well, I've been talking to as many people as I can find here on the floor. I think there are probably only a handful of people who know what John Turner's going to say tonight, and they are the people with him, his Principal Secretary, Peter Connolly, and his Deputy Principal Secretary, Doug Kirkpatrick, as well as his family. The people here who on the campaign tour on the floor here are saying they don't believe that John Turner will make his decision tonight. They see the question as two ways. They're not saying that he's going to stay on. They're just saying that he won't let us know. What they look at is what they consider the more positive results of the election, that he has more than doubled the number of seats he won in '84, that he had a terrific campaign. I also believe that having seen him speak to the constituents in Vancouver Quadra, he'll be very concerned about letting them down, that he'll want to come and talk about the local campaign as well, and people work very hard for him. He's not about to let them down by resigning his seat. I'd be certain of that.
Okay, Keith. Well, thanks very much. We'll be back to you as soon as John Turner arrives in that room for the speech, and we'll cut right there back to you. Let's, while we wait, though, Barbara Frum has her panel assembled one more time. Let's hear what they've got to say now. Barbara.
Christina McCall, we spent an awful lot of time this night talking about John Turner, his prospects, what he could have done and what he should have done. Let's talk about the man who won the election. Does a fundamental reevaluation have to take place of this man as a political leader?
What I thought was struck by when I was looking at him is that he's the most American of our prime ministers, and I always think of him as a kid in the hinterland in 1951 who bought the American dream, and he's the guy who not only bought it, he got it. You know, I met him first in 1961. He was getting the law degree. He got the influential friends. He brought regional news to the Tories in Ottawa. He got into the corporate life in Montreal. He got the gorgeous wife. He got the prime ministership. He was the boy with his nose against the American window, and he got it.
How about his mastery of the Canadian political system? I'll tell you why I ask.
Well,
2 years ago, at the bottom of the pit, when there had been so much harm done to his party, to his government, to his ability to govern, he told me he was going to win next time, just before an interview. I looked at him, I said, I didn't want to be rude. I couldn't believe it. How did he do it?
How did he do it? He did it because he has a passionate belief in this country and because he has an understanding of the people of this country, and he went out and sold a vision, which I think is far more in keeping with the frankly rather dated view of Canada, which both the Liberals and the NDP were promoting. I must say I find it a little offensive. Your comments that he's bought into the American dream. I don't think there's anything terribly American. I think it's very Canadian to grow up in a small town in Quebec, in a lower middle class family, to overcome all kinds of obstacles and become Prime Minister of this country.
I think he's done.
I think it's a superb political triumph, and I think to take that away from him or to describe that as being American in any way is really, really. I mean, I just.
Knowlton, how about to take
offensive? I find it offensive.
Knowlton, how about to take?
No, I'm pro-Canadian. I don't think the two are necessarily.
You're a proud Canadian.
Yes, I am a proud Canadian. Well, I'm sorry.
It.
I think it's quite possible to be a conservative and
Knowlton,
a proud Canadian. So do the majority of people in this country, as a matter of fact.
How about taking Quebec from the Liberal Party?
Well,
the Liberal Party has owned Quebec for all this time.
I think that is his single greatest achievement. And you go back to the convention, the leadership convention, which chose him, in which he made such an effort to make sure that the Conservative Party adopted the French fact of this nation. And I think he did more for the Conservative Party in that convention, coming out of the convention as leader and building the support he did in Quebec the first time, and now again the second time, as we said earlier, the second time in 100 years he's brought Quebec back to the Conservatives.
I thank you, and back to you, Peter.
All right, Barbara, any moment now, John Turner will be arriving in his Liberal Party headquarters in Vancouver. We look forward and with a lot of interest and anticipation to hear what John Turner has to say. But in the couple of moments before that arrival, we're going to go over and see how our friend Phil Millett is making out from the Financial Post. He's been working all evening on the cartoon that will appear in the paper later this week based on what's happened tonight. Alan Garr is with Phil Millett. Alan.
Peter, I've been having a good time this evening watching Phil just put the final touches on John Turner, just doing a little nation building and having a good time. That flag looks a bit interesting, Phil. What have you, what little secret missile have you put in this cartoon?
What flag?
Okay. It looks like it was a rough campaign.
Well, yeah, it was. The big Como handyman has come off with a few bruises. I think partly in just in the campaign itself, the debate. It's been a terrific campaign for the cartoonist, and certainly it's provided an awful lot of material. So here we are with
just doing a little nation building. And he managed to get his free trade zone.
Yes, he did. He was. He's got it all here. And
okay, thanks a lot, Phil. Over to you, Peter.
All right, Alan and Phil Millett, and if you want to take a closer look at that cartoon, you can pick up the Wednesday edition of the Financial Post, and you'll see it in there. Brian Mulroney doing a little nation building, but with a few bandages around a few fingers, etc., for the campaign that's been run over the last 7 weeks. As we said, we're waiting for John Turner, but we do have an opportunity to go back now over the evening and have a look at some of the winners and the losers of campaign election 88.
I think it's going to be a disaster. I think in my own community, I know that there are several factories that already have plans to close down and move south, and I think it would be a great tragedy for Canada if the trade deal went through. But if it's the will of the people, then obviously we would support the will of the people.
I think it's clear that our party did not do as well in Eastern Ontario
and in Ottawa generally, and with the collapse of the NDP here, that became even more so. I'm not going to engage in an exercise.
All right, well, we'll have to go back to that pack a little later. John Turner and his wife Jill have arrived at the Liberal headquarters in Vancouver, talking with a couple of aides now as they get ready to head into the hall. They've got their children with them as well. Mr. Turner, a night of mixed emotions. Let's hear if he has to say anything before he goes in.
What can you say? Because of your life you lost, are you going to stay on, sir?
We're going to make a little statement in a minute.
Are you going to stay on?
Here we go.
How are you feeling, sir? Watch off.
John Turner not tipping his hand as he goes into the hall tonight. He says, "You'll hear my speech in a few moments' time." For Mr. Turner, a night of mixed emotions. Clearly, he has lost the big number, the big election tonight, the Conservatives winning a majority. But you have to look at those numbers that are up on the wall. The party is in second place. It's more than double the number of seats it's had from last time. It's making a breakthrough in Manitoba as they racked up a number of seats in Winnipeg, taking them from both the Tories and from the NDP. They did extremely well in Atlantic Canada, and the first indications this evening showed a Liberal tide starting to happen in Atlantic Canada, but where they had to do it in Ontario, they fell short, to a lot of people's surprise, including Liberal Premier David Peterson, who campaigned alongside John Turner against the free trade deal. Peterson surprised as we talked to him earlier this evening to find out the Tories had won more seats in Ontario than the Liberals had, but also a bitter disappointment in Quebec. Historically, the home of the Liberal Party, it's not that way anymore now. For 2 elections straight, the Tories sweeping through Quebec, doing even better this time round than they did last time. So for John Turner, some mixed emotions tonight, and it's almost sad in a way that so many people are having to nail him on this one question: are you going to hang around? Are you staying? It is a night of difficult questions for John Turner. That is clearly one of them. He will probably signal something tonight, although I think the agreement around this table has been we don't expect to see John Turner resigning as leader of the Liberal Party. He'll probably offer his congratulations to the Prime Minister, as did Ed Broadbent, on the victory tonight by the Conservatives. But he will probably also talk in passionate terms, as he has throughout this campaign, about the Canada he believes in, why he fought on this one single issue throughout the campaign. But he will also point to the Liberal successes tonight, to the breakthrough, as we said, in Winnipeg, the more than doubling of their seats. But it does leave some interesting questions for the Liberal Party as they try to regroup once again after being beaten for the second time in a row at a majority level by the Conservatives. We've said a number of times tonight that hasn't happened this century, David.
Well, beaten again in terms of numbers, Peter, but in personal terms, I think one can say that to a remarkable degree, John Turner has emerged as a winner in a personal sense in this campaign. He was tagged with the loser image after the '84 campaign, never really shed it, but somehow he seemed to come alive in this campaign against daunting odds, one of them, of course, being a pinched nerve in the back that almost left him limping through many events during the campaign, but he seemed to overcome those hurdles. He performed with a passion and ability that we really haven't seen him achieve in years.
The Turner's family on stage now, getting ready for the speech from the Liberal leader. There clearly was this turning point in the middle of the campaign after the debate, and David, you and I have both talked to Mr. Turner privately a number of times in the past year. If there was one thing he was looking forward to in this campaign more than anything, was the second shot at a debate. We remember what happened in '84, where he lost the big exchange with Brian Mulroney in the debate that turned that campaign around. This time he wanted that one more shot at Brian Mulroney, and this time he delivered. He said he would, and he did, and he almost turned the campaign on its ear. He certainly did for a couple of weeks or so, but it became the old nagging question of continuing on the momentum. As Knowlton Nash pointed out earlier this evening, if the campaign had ended a week or so after the election, we may well have looked at a different result tonight.
A week or so after the debates.
After the debate, sorry. Mr. Turner getting ready to address the group in Vancouver Quadra. He's not in a rush to do that, as he wants to shake a few hands before he does that of many of the supporters who've gathered in British Columbia. I think perhaps one of the other things on the downside, he was hoping for a breakthrough in British Columbia. That didn't happen tonight beyond his own seat.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's listen to John Turner.
First of all, thank you very much. Before I talk to my friends here in Quadra, of course I have a few things to say to the country. Throughout this campaign, I have promoted my vision of a strong, independent, and sovereign Canada. A Canada a Canada in charge of its own destiny. I've done so with everything I have, with all my heart, and with all my strength, and I have no regrets at all. Throughout this campaign, I have had the unique experience, unique opportunity to speak about Canada, to express my profound belief in the people of our country, and my confidence that our future must remain a Canadian future. Today, despite the fact that the Conservatives have the largest percentage of the popular vote, still a majority of Canadians have clearly expressed their wish to keep this country strong, sovereign, and independent. At the same time, they have also chosen to give the Conservative government another mandate. The Conservatives have won a majority of the seats in the House of Commons and have accordingly a right to form a government. And I believe fundamentally that people are always right. A few minutes ago, I telephoned Mr. Mulroney to assure him of my cooperation. Today, Canadians have also doubled the representation of the Liberal Party in the House of Commons. We will continue to fight for our ideals and our vision of the country. We will make our presence felt, we will be vigilant, and we will be loyal to the principles of justice and equality and compassion for which this party has always fought. Now to the people of Quadra, I want to say, first of all, how much I have appreciated your support, not only today and tonight, but throughout the last 4 years. You have stood by me in good times and bad times, and I am extremely sensitive to the friendship and the loyalty and the commitment that you have given me. And to the people of Vancouver who live in this wonderful riding that starts West Point Grey and travels almost to the boundaries of Burnaby, I want to say I've appreciated that support, welcomed the people who are in the former riding of Kingsway. I have supported you and I've supported your efforts to be part of the Canadian picture in the past. You have given me your support in return, and I will continue to represent you as best I can. A political party particularly the Liberal Party, both here in Quadra and across the country, is primarily a group of volunteers, of individuals who have a sense of duty and a sense of purpose for the country. And I want to thank all our workers here in Quadra, the workers in our headquarters in Ottawa, and in every campaign office in the 295 ridings across the country. I want to thank all those volunteers who made a dedicated effort on behalf of our party. And to our candidates across Canada who took our message to the doors and the living rooms of Canadians in every corner of our great country. Win or lose, you ran excellent campaigns and spirited campaigns. You can be proud, and I'm grateful to all of you for having offered to stand under the Liberal banner as Liberals in a very historic campaign. I know that my friends in Quadra particularly would allow me a personal note or two to say to Jill and to Elizabeth, who campaigned with me, to Michael and to David and Andrew, say how grateful I am to my family for the support they have given me during the last 4 years. I want to say to Jill and the family, and you all are sensitive to it, that the sacrifices of public life can be severe and can be high. But my family, I believe, can stand tall and proud in the commitment they've given our country and the support in personal terms they have given me, total support, and I couldn't have done what I did for the people of Quadra and what I've done for the people of the country without Jill and the family behind me, and I'm very grateful. Most of all, to the people of our great country, I thank you once again for your support. Thank those who have put their faith in me again today and in the Liberal Party. I will uphold the confidence you have placed in me. I will honor that trust, and I will continue to hold my country first and foremost.
Throughout this campaign, I devoted all my energy to promoting my vision of a sovereign Canada, an autonomous country, master of its own destiny. With all my heart and all my honesty, I have worked for this, and I have no regrets. Throughout the campaign, I undertook to speak about this Canada, to speak about my sincere commitment to Canadian people, and to reaffirm my confidence in its future, that is, the future of Canada. The issue was well discussed. I have no regrets. Today, our Conservative colleagues obtained a majority, that is, with a majority of Canadians who have clearly indicated their will to preserve the sovereignty and independence of their country. At the same time, however, they chose to give a second mandate to the Conservatives by giving them a majority of seats in Parliament, and thus they merit the right of governing our country. In my judgment, the people are always right. A few moments ago, I telephoned Mr. Mulroney and I assured him that we would collaborate with him entirely. Today, the Canadian people also elected an increased number of Liberal members, and we are going to continue to struggle for our ideal and our vision of our country. We will be present, we will be vigilant, and we will be faithful to the principles of justice, equality, which we have always put forward. For the Quadra riding, the assembly here this evening, for all the members of my riding of Quadra, who once again have shown their confidence in me to represent them in Ottawa, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I thank you once again for your support, for your approval, and I will commit myself once again to represent you in Ottawa. I would like to thank all the volunteers from our party across the entire country, all those people who have worked for the Liberal Party in Ottawa and in all the ridings across the country who worked so hard to promote our cause. And once again, I would like to thank our candidates who carried the Liberal message with a proud voice. Whatever the individual results of the campaign, we can all be proud of what we have accomplished. A very special thanks to my family, Jill, my children, Elizabeth, Michael, David, and Andrew. Everyone knows that the political life can be very difficult, requires very severe sacrifices from time to time. But I have had the advantage to have benefited from the entire support of my wife and my children. And thank you to all of you, my fellow Canadians, who have shown your confidence in me and in the Liberal Party. You may be certain that I will continue to work as strongly as possible to maintain and to keep this confidence and support in me throughout my mandate. Thank you. Good night.
For a very, very interesting campaign.
All right, John Turner in Vancouver tonight, addressing head-on the ups and the downs of this campaign for the Liberal Party, suggesting right off, after having talked to Brian Mulroney on the telephone a little while ago, that the Conservatives have their majority to do with whatever they choose. Oh, Mr. Turner still has a few more comments.
I want to say, now in personal terms, I want to say to May Brown and Peter Pearce and Sarah McAlpine, and everyone who has worked so long and thoroughly on my behalf, on behalf of the party, for the last 7-8 weeks of the campaign. It has been a beautifully organized campaign. We have got out to meet the people of Quadra. We have welcomed the people from Kingsway who now join us. It's been a superb example of commitment to country, commitment to party, and commitment to me as your member of parliament and as your candidate. I am immensely grateful for everything everybody in this room has done. I see so many faces that are dear to me, close to me, some of them friends of a lifetime. It's been a great privilege to fight again. It's been a wonderful mark of friendship and approval that you've given me, and there's no greater honor that I've ever had in my life than to serve and to continue to serve the people of Vancouver Quadra. It's been a very, very good.
And once again, Turner mentioning how faithful his supporters in Vancouver Quadra have been, and once again indicating that he's not in a rush to leave serving the people of Vancouver Quadra, which will end, at least for the time being, all the discussion and comments about just what happens with John Turner. But David Halton addressing the concerns on free trade, saying he did fight against it, but Mulroney has won on the deal, and his party will not hold it up as it goes through passage in the House of Commons. On the upside for the Liberals, talking about how, in fact, they have double their number of seats in the House of Commons.
Peter, I found John Turner's choice of words when it came to his future very, very carefully chosen, leaving a lot of options open. He said, "I will continue to represent you, the electors of Vancouver Quadra, as best I can." He didn't specifically mention staying on as party leader, so in a sense he's left a few. Maybe I'm reading a little too much into it, but he carefully left some options open on that.
All right, well, immediately after an election also is not the time for a party leader to step down right away. There are all sorts of things that have to be considered at this point in terms of the party. There is a convention due in April of next year, and there is an automatic review vote at that convention. So the next few months will tell the story in terms of the future of John Turner, specifically on the question of leadership of the Liberal Party. But John Turner and Jill Turner exit the stage in Quadra after the results fully in now on election 88. We'll just check to see whether Mr. Turner is going to stop by to have a chat with anybody on the way out. We have every indication we've had is that he doesn't plan to do any interviews, but we are in the position to listen in if he does choose to want to do that. There's Doug Kirkpatrick, one of Turner's closest aides there, peeking around the corner, waiting to see where Mr. Turner may be going at this particular point, but it looks like John Turner's leaving.
Interesting, too, I found, Peter, that on his choice of words on the free trade issue, he did say that the majority of Canadians, referring, of course, to that total vote for the New Democrats and Liberals combined, is greater than the Conservatives, saying that Canadians, in fact, voted to keep Canada sovereign and independent, but at the same time he hedged. He did say that the people are always right, referring to the fact that Mulroney has won this majority.
All right, well, that's the scene in the Vancouver Quadra riding where John Turner won a personal re-election tonight, but in many ways, as we've been saying, a bittersweet night for John Turner. The party doubling its seats, making a breakthrough in Winnipeg, but on the big numbers, the ones that really count in terms of the overall election night, it was the Conservatives forming a majority government and the Liberals in second place. But that second place finish is another one of the things Turner will point to. Many of the critics within his own party saying that he was leading them on a road to oblivion and a third place finish in this election, and there's no doubt that's exactly what the polls were indicating as well at the beginning of this campaign, but he turned it around on the debate and other things throughout the campaign, and as it ended up, the Liberals firmly in second place, but once again firmly in second place to a majority Conservative government. Well, we're getting close to wrapping up our long evening of election results tabulation here tonight, but we want to drop in with Barbara Frum one more time and her panel of political analysts and strategists who have been watching the results come in tonight. Let's hear their final thoughts. Here's Barbara.
Robin Sears, John Turner has a look on his face that says, "I didn't win the country, but I won anyway," as though he won on his own personal agenda. What do you think that agenda was?
I must say, he handled himself with considerable grace tonight and during the campaign in very difficult circumstances. And I would encourage all those in his party who may be tempted to be unhappy about the outcome to be mindful of that.
What is he suggesting, Patrick Gossage?
I don't know what he's suggesting. Robin's been charming during this whole thing and remains charming, but I don't know. I think Turner talked tonight of friendship and loyalty. You know, he hasn't known as much as I think he deserved in the last few months, and he's won. You know, he's fought a very lonely battle in some respects, and there he was up tonight. You know, stiff and forthright as usual, and fighting on, a guy who was counted out by people around this desk, you know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and who will start to be counted out again tomorrow by some of the pundits. And I'll tell you, he isn't to be counted out yet.
Christina McCall talked about the realignment of the country and suggested that somehow the Tories are going to move to the right and suggesting that the Liberals are going to move to the left. True?
No, I think that's nonsense, frankly. I mean, I think if you listened carefully to what the Prime Minister said tonight, it was clear that he was trying to be reassuring, that he was sending out a message of reconciliation to the Canadians out there who were anxious about the free trade agreement, perhaps anxious about what we might do over the next 4 years. I think we've successfully occupied the center of this country for the last 4 years, and that's one of the reasons we were re-elected so overwhelmingly tonight. I don't see any kind of a shift to the right. I think that's just, it's not practical politics in Canada. It's not the real politic of Canada, and I think if you look at the kinds of people who voted for us this evening, they don't represent a right rump at all. They represent
Nancy,
moderate, pragmatic thinking people.
I wish you were right, and I know that the views you represent in your party are those. But I lived in England during the first Thatcher administration, and I lived in England during the second Thatcher administration. And the forces that now control the Conservative Party in this government are very right-wing forces indeed.
Is this going to be the new tone of political discussion in this country?
Well, I think Robin would like it to be. It would be in his political interest if he could polarize things, but the reality is they didn't do that through this campaign.
How about realigning in your party? Some people think that the NDP is going to have to rethink whether it should have stayed with its core, not tried to dream the dream of national power.
The first thing I have to say is thank you to the people of British Columbia, not only on behalf of my party, but on behalf of the country for having delivered a strong opposition to this government. The second thing I have to say is that those people who do not dream of power and do not want to be in government do not belong in this business.
I think, though, that the country's moved on. It started to move on in 1984. It's now moved another step on, and I think it's up to some people who are thoughtful to say where it's moving. You know,
and I think one of the places
it has moved. There's no doubt about it. It's not the Trudeau coalition anymore.
That all three parties now can legitimately say that they are national parties, and then I think that's a very healthy thing for the political process in this country, and all the sort of cynicism and negativism we've heard from some of the press in this campaign hasn't been borne out by the results. I think.
On that healing note, we will throw it back to you, Peter.
All right, Barbara, thanks very much. Time for some closing thoughts from some of us who've been sitting around the table this evening watching the results coming in terms of what we've witnessed as a part of history tonight, the Tory majority, the free trade deal now going through. Let's start it off with Wendy Mesley, who was watching Quebec tonight, but was also watching Brian Mulroney throughout the campaign. Wendy, your closing thoughts.
Well, I felt very much that during this campaign that the free trade issue threatened to divide this country, but tonight we've seen that 43% of the voters have decided to take that leap of faith. It's a victory of historic proportions for Brian Mulroney, particularly in Quebec. He's the first Tory leader since John A. Macdonald to set roots into Quebec soil. But obviously more than half of the population voted against free trade or against Brian Mulroney. He's going to have some healing to do. I'm sure he feels he has a mandate to push ahead, but it'll be interesting to watch exactly how he does it.
All right. Don Newman, watched Ontario, watched BC, watched some of the Atlantic provinces. Your thoughts tonight?
Well, I think that we're really going to see a new Prime Minister. Brian Mulroney has, as you pointed out, been the first Conservative leader to win 2 consecutive majorities in this century. In fact, he's only the second Conservative leader ever to do that. Sir John A. Macdonald was the other one since Confederation, so he's in pretty good company there. I think you have to hand it to him. When he had to come out of the cocoon and fight for his majority, fight for his government, he was able to do that. On the other hand, everybody says that this is the deciding election on free trade. I said earlier in the evening, Peter, and I still believe it, I don't think this is the last we've heard about free trade. I think the hard part is still to come, the negotiations on what is and isn't a subsidy. It takes 10 years for the deal to go into effect. And I think we should maybe take out our pencils and our date books and mark down 4 years from now. We may be back having another divisive and deciding election on free trade then.
Well, and just think, before we get to that divisive and exciting and passionate election campaign, we as journalists and reporters will be once again called upon for the big challenge of trying to report the free trade story even more. Eric Malling has watched things in Atlantic Canada and the prairies for us tonight. Eric, your thoughts?
Well, of course, the prairies prove that three-party politics is alive and well in Canada, Peter. I don't know, it's late. I'm sure most people in the country wish the Conservatives well. They'll understand that it's
43% of them anyway.
They'll understand that it's nothing personal, that we in the press are going to keep watching, and I hope the Prime Minister's press conference tomorrow isn't his last for another 2 years. We'd like to talk to him more.
Okay. Barbara Frum's had the kind of evening that is always interesting, asking the questions, and chance now, Barbara, for you to give us some of your own thoughts on what we've witnessed tonight.
I am going to take a slightly different view about the prospects for how people will feel about free trade. There's been a lot of speculation about how much healing is going to be needed. I'm not sure that much is going to be needed. I suspect there'll be a great relief that it's over. A great realization that we have to move forward. We had to do something. This government had a program, had a plan. I think Canadians are going to say, let's try it. Let's see. a lot of people are going to stop, I think, being quite so agitated, and I think it will not be as rupturing. There'll be disgruntled intellectuals in Toronto, I don't doubt, and there'll be angry farmers in Saskatchewan, I don't doubt. But a lot of Canadians, I suspect, are going to say, let's try, let's see, because we can't stay where we are.
Okay. Our chief political correspondent, David Halton, who's been sitting beside me all evening. Your thoughts?
Well, Peter, I remember us all sitting around in the studio in '84 predicting that this was an '84 watershed election, an election in which perhaps the Conservative Party under Brian Mulroney had replaced the Liberals as the natural governing party in this country, the party that dominated Canadian politics for most of this century. Then 2 years later, with the Conservatives at the lowest point of any governing party in history, we probably regretted those predictions. Now it's swung back again dramatically, and I think tonight that we have to say that we may be seeing the beginning of a Tory dynasty, a party firmly based in Quebec, firmly based in the West, and even with solid support in Ontario.
All right. Well, it has been a long night, a fascinating night, and it was a night when more than a little history was made. In one sense, you've witnessed the political story of the century. We say that for two reasons, really. First, because it's been that long since a Conservative Prime Minister won 2 back-to-back majority governments. But secondly, we've witnessed the passage in many ways tonight of the Free Trade Accord, and when you think back through this country's history, the other prime ministers, the other leaders have tried to make an arrangement like this with the United States. It has not gone through. It has been defeated either in the House of Commons or in by the Canadian electorate. Well, tonight we've witnessed history. The Tories have a majority. Free trade does go through. Results are in from every riding now. Let's take a final look at where we stand at this point in the evening. 295 seats at stake. You can see just a couple yet to be declared, but this will give you a good idea of the overall numbers. The Conservatives with a number at 169, the Liberals at 82, and the NDP at 44. More than 12 million of you voted today. 3 out of every 4 Canadians eligible to cast ballots did so. Here's how you divided your votes among the 3 major parties. Of the, what are we looking at there? A little more than 12.5 million votes cast. 43% went for the Conservatives, 32% went for the Liberals, 20% went for the NDP, and for the variety of other parties that ran in this election campaign, they totaled 5%. Those are the final facts and figures after a long night. We signed on, what, a little over 7 hours ago when we first went to Newfoundland with the results out there. It's been a fascinating night. I think we all agree on that, and there has been a lot of history made. On a night like this, though, you only see the people in front of the cameras, and we have to do a lot of thanking for a lot of people, not just here in Toronto, but across this country. The technical people at the CBC, once again, putting together the kind of electronic networks that seem impossible when you look at them on paper. But when you just think through the past 7 hours, if you've been watching since Newfoundland, you can tell very little went wrong in those 7 hours of trying to hook back and forth across the country. It is a credit to the people who work here, the men and women, the technical staff, and also the reporters and researchers. Let's take one little shot upstairs in the control room where they've been trying to tie all this together throughout the evening. There they are. They've all gone. No wonder I've got to keep talking. 1:45 here in Toronto, but the full credit to everybody up in the control room and to, I won't bother running through all the names, but there are a lot of people who've worked on this program throughout the evening, and we thank all of them. It's been a lot of fun. Election nights in this country always are. This one, an historic one, as most are. And as we can tell from the final results, it's going to be another 3 or 4 years before we see another national election. A lot of fun, and from all of us, thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow, first of all, in less than 12 hours from now when the Prime Minister holds that news conference out in Baie-Comeau. We will cover that live. Advisory to those of you watching in BC, your local stations will be picking up coverage now with more results across British Columbia. For the rest of the country, we have a special CBC News update coming on. Thanks for watching. I'm Peter Mansbridge. Good night.
The leader of the New Democratic Party in Canada, our very own Ed Rogers.
Canadian election coverage comes to the American audience from the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
C-SPAN is a nonprofit cooperative created and supported